You're live! Welcome! Hello, everybody! You're live! Make sure this is working this time. So I don't sound like an idiot. Don't sound like an idiot. Fucking idiot. I'm not going to tell anybody about this one. I'm just going to start watching. Based. Hank Green, Alex O'Connor. How is it? Jeez. Okay. I already watched part of this. Here we go. I am now live. Live on your channel, yeah? Actually, it's probably better over here, maybe. Wonder if people get like notified when I'm on. There we go. Okay. Damn it. Okay. Ethereum mode, and let's go.
Yeah, what was the the other philosophical question you were asking there?
I was just wondering, like,
I'll go back a little bit because I've already started watching this, but I need the full context.
Is the most interesting thing in the known universe, and that like
goes I really agree with
how much we're interested in it. Like, I think we are appropriately interested in it. You know, I think nature documentaries and cancer biologists all together like are appropriately interested in like this really weird thing that is going on. But yeah, what was the the other philosophical question you were asking there?
I was just wondering, like, some people sort of look at this and they feel really really excited. They're like, cool, I'm part of this big thing. Yeah. And some people feel like, oh, right, I'm just one part of this like really, really big thing, And I wonder which sort of side of the coin you're on there. And
yeah, I mean, if it was like some big thing that I didn't think was important, one of the sort of, I think that there's like nobody who's ever lived that didn't change the world some. Even the people who live for like 2 days, and I think that there's nobody who's ever changed the world by themselves, So like, we're all a part of this thing, and the
Hank Green is just so based. He's so based. He's just so based. He just has such a good perspective on things. Every time you think he's gonna go off the rails, he like comes back to like, nope, grounded. I wonder if he likes Parmenides.
Way that culture constructs itself is in a lot of ways very reflective of the way that biology constructs itself. So like there's like lots of natural selection going on in culture all the time. Like we don't upload YouTube videos that fail, like if we try something and it works really badly, people don't like it. We don't do it again. So advertisers don't use advertisements that don't work. And so they sort of all settle in on familiar patterns, and they convergently evolve into selling toothpaste with scantily clad hot people. So I think that we are of the living things. There are people who get mad at me about this, but I think that of the living things, we are definitely among the most interesting. And I mean, would someone get mad at me about that? We are definitely among the most interesting.
It's the internet.
Someone will get mad about something I say today. But we all get to participate in it and like do our like it's such a weird 8 billion people on a planet.
All the people who hate their lives and
kind of making it work for the most part, obviously not entirely. Doesn't seem like it would work.
Yeah.
And yet it does. And like, what are the different forces that are making it work? Like, how are we building a society together? How are we building family together? How are we building community together? And that's just like the work of all of us. And you wouldn't think that any particular, cyanobacteria mattered, and like kind of doesn't. But like it's all like it's almost wrong to think of any individual cyanobacteria as an individual in the same way that like obviously humans are individuals, but there is this way in which we aren't, in which we are creating something that is emergent from us, that is much more interesting than any of us individually, much more complex than any of us individually, and I think ultimately more important than any of us individually.
There's a bit of a sort of our cultural moment is very individualistic, right? It's very
really
sort of me, I, and
it's historically unusual how it is right now.
We'll get back to Hank in just a moment, but first, if you've been watching the show for any amount of time now, you'll know that I talk a lot about media bias. Bias is a huge problem, and it's never going to go away. But wouldn't it be great if there were a way for us as consumers of online material to navigate this space, objectively comparing the way that different sources are representing the same story? Well, that is exactly what today's sponsor, Ground News, allows you to do. Ground News aggregates thousands of local and international news outlets all in one place, so you can compare reporting across the political spectrum. Try it out at ground.news/AlexOC. Take a look at this story about scientists spotting the brightest flare yet from a supermassive black hole. With ground news, I can see that for whatever reason, most of the coverage sits in the center, with only 28% leaning to the left and only 7% leaning to the right. So if the news that you tend to read is polarized, or if you only typically read from one side of the political spectrum, you could just miss a story like this. And ground news even has a dedicated blind spot tab, which specifically seeks out stories that you would otherwise miss based on the news that you normally read. So cut through media bias and get to the real story by going to ground.news/AlexOC, or by scanning the QR code that's on your screen. Use my link to get 40% off their unlimited access Advantage plan. That said, back to Hank. Yeah, and I wonder if it's historically unusual, therefore, to have this particular brand of nihilism, that being a part of this grand thing is actually a bad thing.
Well, we don't. We don't.
See, that's most of Alex's audience, by the way.
More coherent culture-wide stories. And you talk about this, you know this stuff much better than I do.
Well, I mean, one of those big ones is religion, and we talk about religion a lot, but it's not just religion, right? I think about the reason why America works as a secular experiment is because although, it was founded in a pretty secular manner, it had stories. You've got Washington and the cherry tree or something, right? And you've got the founding fathers. And I sometimes say, it seems like when I watch debates from the 70s or 80s, it seems like debates were kind of settled just by figuring out what the founding fathers said. It's well, Thomas Jefferson thought this, and everyone goes, oh, okay then.
Yeah.
You know, they're quoting something.
Yeah, that still works on me to some extent.
You think?
A little bit, for me particularly. I'm like, well, in part because you had a bunch of people who were trying to figure out a way to do a thing in a very new way, and it did kind of work.
Yeah,
it has gotten better over time, which they allow for. You know,
right.
it is not. It remains an imperfect system. But they set up a system that was. I look at New Zealand or something, like a more recent democracy where they had some others to go off of when they planned theirs, and I was like, there's some things there that are better than our way. But we didn't have any idea how to do a democracy. It was an entirely new idea, and the amount that the world has changed in those 275 years is so huge. What is it now? 200, something like that.
What, since the declaration?
Yeah.
Isn't it nearly 250?
Nearly 250.
I feel like people are talking
we're about to get to 250.
And that'll be next year, 2026, I think.
And that amount of change that the system allowed for is kind of remarkable.
Yeah, and in many ways that was sort of how it was designed, I suppose. But it wasn't like they wrote into the Constitution and the Declaration these national origin stories, but it kind of had that revolution. Look at the artwork, this sort of
they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing in the same way that everybody who's ever created a religion knew what they were doing.
Yeah, right.
You have to create
symbols,
the myths.
Yeah, and do you think we have a current sort of cultural myth, or is it just
we have a really fractured bunch of cultural myths?
Yeah, it feels that way. It feels like there's sort of nothing unifying.
And
so when people
and I'm sure that it's always been fractured. Nationalism is always going to be more fractured than a religion. You don't get to have a pope. And if you do, then that's actually quite bad. There are some places that do kind of get to have the pope of nationalism and call those dictators.
Yes.
And it's supposed to be messy.
There does seem to be something different though about now versus then. And sometimes people say it's we've lost our national story, or we've lost our religious faith. And I'm we've also developed telecommunication algorithms, and I'm sort of trying to work out who's right here. It does seem like there's something kind of going on with people not being very happy. And I wonder, do you think that is actually something new? Do you think there is really something different about the world today, or is it nothing new ever happens?
I think there's something new about the world today. I worry a lot about the hopelessness of what happens to you when you're exposed to every terrible thing in the world, which is just relatively new. And then when I call it, this is such a silly thing, but in my head I call this the sad gap. So there's this period of time between when you find out about a terrible problem and when you find out that people are working on it, and it can be pretty wide. And if you're only ever exposed to the terrible problems and you never see the history of how terrible problems have been taken on in the past, the current crop of people who are doing technology or policy or cultural work to try and address those problems, then all you ever see is the bad news. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I feel like I can give is focus. Find something that is your biggest concern and go after that. And there are absolutely some problems in the world
that's what I'm doing.
I think there's a lot of attention paid to them in part because they are so insoluble, because they are so contentious as well. We tend to pay more attention to the ones that people disagree about. And but to pick, and early in my career I picked climate change, and it was a years long process to go from this is not a solvable problem and just sort of being exposed to more and more reasons why it is hard. And that's almost kind of nice. There's something to being exposed to the reasons why a problem is hard that actually creates hope. Because the real hopeless thing is thinking this problem is huge and the only reason it exists is evil. It is caused by evil.
Right.
And if only we could all just sort of do one dumb easy thing, the problem would go away.
Yep.
But you look at cancer or you look at climate change and you find problems that are actually quite hard to solve. There's 8 billion of us. And we all need to eat. And we have preferences, and you can't take away the things people have already had. You can't say you don't get a fridge anymore. You can't say you can't fly to see your grandma. You have to keep all of these things that we have already added to the world, because if you take them away, people will be very angry. but then you have to create energy in new ways.
And
like,
it
we didn't
might
know
be
how to do that.
unjust,
And
I
now
don't
we
know,
do.
yeah.
And now, like, for sure, throughout the entire process, there have been people trying to like desperately stop it from happening because they own the oil that's in the ground, and if they can't get it out and sell it, they can't make that money. So yeah, there have been people trying to stop it, and those people, I think, are motivated entirely, like, largely by greed. They probably think that, you know, they think about the good that they are doing for society as well as their own power and greed.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, they think about, well, you like driving your car, you know, you like the gasoline, you like the plastic bottles, but I think that those brakes have been put on in a way that is very unjust and very, you know, like, infuriating. But the problem isn't easy, and so that is almost a hopeful thing when you realize, oh, actually, there's all these interconnected things that actually make this quite hard. And then there's like a step after that where you're like, and so that problem is being solved in this way. Concrete's being solved in this way. You know, the electric stoves are going to work this way. How are we going to get people off of natural gas in the home? How does a heat pump work? What is the future of advanced geothermal? Like, all of this stuff where it's like there isn't a way to fix everything. But once you pay a lot of attention to a problem, and then you actually, like, don't just become more hopeful, you become useful.
Yeah.
Because you know about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So then how...
Yes, right. And you can apply your knowledge. That's the thing. You have to start moving and do. Nice. Cinema. Hank Green already believes in momentumism. You don't even have to sell him on it. This is in line with my philosophy, right? You have to keep doing and moving and stumbling through in order to actually affect change. You can't, like, you have to get started on it. It's like the best way to get data, right? But within that, though, you can't just rely on that rule alone, because you also need a safe environment to make mistakes within that aren't like critical mistakes or mistakes that will get people killed. So again, it's this. Wait, shit. I can't center myself when wait. Fuck. It's this. Okay. 6, 7.
How do you cultivate that kind of attitude? I mean, yourself, like, I sometimes get asked about this because I don't like social media. I don't think there's anyone on earth who is like, yeah, I feel good about my relationship with social media. It's about rights.
I'll say that there have been times in my life when I've loved it.
Yeah.
When it's just felt like the world's most exciting playground.
Yeah.
And then it inevitably, like, some new platform comes up and I'm like, I love this. And then 2 or 3 years later, I'm like, actually,
all the bad stuff.
Turns out it did the same thing as all the other social media platforms.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we're in quite a unique position in that, like, you know, we have people who listen to us and follow us, and that can make it all the more fun. And it's also a job, and that's awesome.
Paid,
yeah. But then at the same time, I'm like, I know what this is doing to people's brains, and it's very horrible, and it's causing, like, you know, pressure.
Making society much less stable. So it's not good for anybody.
Well, what can we do? Are we like the oil conglomerate CEO being like, yeah, it's not great, but, you know, like, you love your car, and like, but when really we just kind of want to keep our jobs. So
yeah, I made a video about this because John and I, my brother, who we create together, he says, are we like cigarettes? Like, are we the cigarettes?
Are we the cigarettes?
Which is not a great feeling to be asking yourself. But the video I made about this was talking in terms of food, which is like, information is good, but like, food is good. Like, nobody's going to disagree with either of those sentences. But if you put systems onto food that are like, how do you compete in the most ultra competitive environment?
Like,
how do you make sure that people eat as much of this as possible? How do you get people addicted to this food so that they can't stop eating it? That's bad. And that's like kind of where we are with food a little bit. Like, another thing to remember is that America is one of the few, like, right now, well, this is as we're having this conversation.
So basically, he's arguing that, like, he and Alex O'Connor are like good food, right? It's like you can. Not all information is bad information. Not all food is bad food. Yeah, it's true.
But where, like, food is abundant and like it's so rare in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
And so that that's a new set of problems to solve. And in the same way, information is now abundant, and also it's competing with other information in this hyper competitive landscape. And so it is doing the same kinds of things, where it is making itself hyper palatable. It is like any trick that anyone can do to get you to stay on a website, they will do it, both on the platform's side and on the creator side. Like, you and I are in collaborations with these algorithms, and we respond to the signals that they send us as creators in terms of what we want to create. So what I think about this long term, I don't know how it goes, but what I think about this long term is that every other media revolution has created a lot of instability and a lot of like just sort of tossed it table. You know, like, you're just playing a game and then you just flip the board. So it feels a little like we flip the board. And in the long term, we're going to look at the internet like we look at books. Like, nobody's like, boy, books were a bad idea. But at the time, some people were like, books were a bad idea. But we need to
I appreciate how clearly he talks, because I can actually listen to him at 2x speed and understand him.
control these. We need to limit them. We need to make sure that only the king can decide what gets printed.
That's true. But then, having said that, right, like, the reason people thought books were bad is because, you know, like, say, the Catholic Church are like, these Protestant books, including the Bible, are terrible. You know, don't go reading these things. And then now we're like, oh, we're really glad that happened, because we kind of now agree with a lot of the stuff that was being read. So, like, to see this technological revolution as good, do we all kind of need to start really believing in the kind of the crap, the junk food, junk information?
I think you're wrong about whether it's actually like that information was good. So the most popular book for like 150 years was the Malleus Maleficarium, which was like, here's how you identify and kill witches. So like, that was a bad book, and it was really popular. And like, Martin Luther was, people hated that guy. He was really reckless. You know, there were a lot of.
Well, also, like the Bible itself. The fact that that's like still is the Bible still the number one book in the world? What is the number one best selling book? Cringe. The fucking Bible. 5 billion 5 billion copies sold. For real. For real. For real. 5 billion copies of the fucking Bible. Wow. You all suck. What? Yeah. So what? Wait. What did Alex O'Connor? What was Alex O'Connor saying though? Because if Hank Green disagreed with him, then I likely agree with Hank over Alex.
Side what gets printed.
That's true. But then having said that, right, like the reason people thought books were bad is because, like say the Catholic Church are like, these Protestant books, including the Bible, are terrible. Don't go reading these things. And then now we're like, oh, we're really glad that happened. Because we kind of now agree with a lot of the stuff that was being read. So like to see this technological revolution is good, do we all kind of need to start really believing in the kind of the crap, the junk food, junk information?
I think you're wrong about whether it's actually like that information was good. So the most popular book for like 150 years was the Malleus Maleficarium, which was like, here's how you identify and kill witches. So like that was a bad book, and it was really popular. And like Martin Luther people hated that guy.
Yeah.
He was really reckless.
Yeah.
There were a lot of wars about this stuff. A lot of people died.
Yeah.
And one of the things I try to keep in mind is that Martin Luther was also wrong about God. I mean, from my perspective, Lutherans, you should have tuned out for that bit. So sorry, but like no, like the Enlightenment didn't follow immediately from the Revolution.
So what did it follow from?
The Reformation. That's the.
Okay, hold on. This is now he's getting some really. Oh, hold on. He just got to two really deep topics. I actually don't know what Hank Green's stance on God and religion is. Well, we're assuming they'll get to that, right? Because this is Alex O'Connor's podcast. But what he just said something interesting there about like the Enlightenment didn't come right from the Reformation. Let me see.
I mean, from my perspective, Lutherans, you should have tuned out for that bit. So sorry, but like no, like the Enlightenment didn't follow immediately from the Revolution.
So what did it follow from?
The Reformation. That's the thing that we're going to see. Like what follows from where we're at right now.
I see.
I think it followed from a lot of time. And like I'm not a historian or an expert on that era, but like what I mean is that like it didn't happen like 20 years later. It happened like 100 years later.
You said Martin Luther was wrong about God from your perspective. I don't want to do the thing that people like me do, which is like bring you onto my show and ask you about the thing that we talk about, because then we'll get the clip. Hank talks about God. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Well, you got to make a thumbnail.
Have a big picture of the crucifix, and I just wonder what you mean by that. I don't know if you've really spoken about your views.
I mean, a little bit.
God and spirituality and religion and stuff. Do you have those views? Do you talk about them? Are you willing to talk about them?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an atheist. I think that I'm an atheist in the way that like when people think about what God is, I think that thing doesn't exist. I don't know about some people, like in terms of how the universe started.
Hey, thank you. Jeez. Wow. Okay. See, just when once again, he just impressed the fuck out of me right when I thought I was going to disagree with him. Oh, so you're just making a funny joke like, oh, sorry, Lutherans. But really, he means all God-believing people. He's an atheist. He was wrong about God. Oh, interesting. Because he's so used to having to cuck the way he says it. Right. But I think he wanted to be more open on the show. He wanted to actually be able to get a chance to talk about it. Okay. Well, this will be very interesting. And already I agree with him, right? Like what God is, the thing that people talk about when they talk about God that thing does not exist. Yeah. That entity does not exist.
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that question. And so like in that way I'm agnostic. So like maybe there was a sort of like a person who set the scene and pushed go.
Yes.
But from everything I have seen since then, it all kind of follows. Like, and this is new.
Oh, so he might be like a deist.
I think that we haven't for that long, sort of like a person who set the.
He seriously
when people
thinks the
think about
like
what God is
based.
I think that thing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I don't know about some people, like in terms of how the universe started. I don't know how to answer that question. And so like in that way I'm agnostic. So like maybe there was a sort of like a person who set the scene and pushed go.
Yes.
But from everything I have seen since then, it all kind of follows. Like and this is new. Like I think that we haven't for that long had a coherent story of how Earth happened, about how the solar system happened, about how evolution happened. But every time we have sort of thought that maybe it was magic, it turned out to not be. So I don't think that there's like a thing that like fathered a child and that child was able to do miracles. But that's like a
that's
interesting. And so like there's like an emptiness I think that can create. But I'm like I don't know how many. I shouldn't say I'm generations into this. My parents raised me as a Christian,
right?
But like we are generations into this questioning. And what I see is like a really powerful technology. Like people are like, do you think God exists? And I'm like, well, I think that God exists in that like he is an extraordinarily powerful force in the world. I think that and like what I don't want to say because it sounds like I'm diminishing it, and I'm not, because like this is what I believe. And what I believe is like human creations that like work together to make something that is, as far as we know, has never been done before. And we're little babies. We have no idea what we're doing. We weren't following the instruction manual, and yet 8 billion of us are able to like do this together.
He's
this
right.
is one of the tools that allows us to do that. And so in the way that I think that there are plenty of illusions that I go by, and some of them are unavoidable illusions. Like I think they're like deep inside of my neurology, like unavoidable illusions. I think that like this is a thing that is real practically, but it's not real for me. So it's not like, but like I'm often jealous I wish that I had some reason to go to a room on Sundays and like hang out with my community.
Yeah, and people have tried to.
No, but the only way to do it is to threaten them with eternal fire. Well, it is because what other reason would you get out of bed on Sunday for?
I think there is something to be said for the fact that you kind of, in order to actually get that kind of stuff, like the actual, you get out of bed and you go somewhere, you have to actually believe it.
Yeah,
right?
it's so powerful. It's so good. Like it has the potential to be, and is often so good.
Yeah,
I don't want to discount that many times when it is not good and when it is harmful to individuals and has been. It's like, does religion help you think we're all in this together? Or does religion help you think my God versus your God?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people have liked to talk about the concept of like.
I don't like when people give so much credit to religion for this stuff because like you see how easy it is. Like actually, I proved it tonight. I saw how easy it was to just write out some constitutional amendments, and I got some people to agree on some shit. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like you don't have to talk about religion. It's just shared values is what it is. Shared values.
Practical truths or metaphorical truths that we sort of treat as though they're true, and it makes us all sort of work well together. And I've always thought that only works to some extent. Like a lot of people are kind of culturally religious because they don't really kind of believe it, but they think that if we all did believe it, we'd have a better society. And I think when it comes down, to the wire, that doesn't work because it's like the rule that the gun is always loaded, which is a really good rule to have. Like if you own a gun, the gun is always loaded. It's not. We're going to treat it as though it is because everything works out better that way. But if somebody breaks into your house and you need to go and defend yourself, you're not going to actually pick up the gun that you know is in fact not loaded. So I think like when it really comes down to making those important life decisions, you have to actually believe the thing for it to like properly work.
Well, it can be a gradient. It can do some things and not others.
Yeah, I think.
And there's also like there's things that I know that I believe. I think that I believe biologically. Like I have no choice but to believe, but I completely accept that they may be not true, like free will.
Yeah,
like 100%. If physicists keep telling me that free will probably doesn't exist, I'm like they're probably right. Like I'm not them, and they know more about this than I do. But like my biology tells me very clearly that free will is real. So like there's something happening in my brain that's like you are an actor.
Yes.
And almost it wouldn't work if my brain hadn't created, if that's an illusion. It wouldn't be possible to be in the world doing the things that we do without that illusion. So it's like really deep down. And I don't even believe, I believe it the way that I believe the chair is here, right? Like Jordan Peterson. like I believe it in a way where where it, like if my life depended on it, I would be like, yeah, no, that's real.
Yeah.
I decided to be here.
Yeah. Which like is a bit involuntary. Like when I ask you to reflect on it, is the chair really here? Well, like maybe, okay, technically this, but it's like it's so.
Well, see, that's why I don't. Now it goes a little off the rails for me, right? Because it's like, well, Hank Green believes in like ultimately like calling it an illusion, and I don't, right? Because free will is not an illusion. You can't say that like the deliberate act of like focusing on one thing over another, like that is a uniquely human ability that we in fact have. And if that's all I'm talking about is just like the either or like that is there's an act there's a voluntary act in there that like animals can't do this. It's like, and we can and also like the reason you know is because you can prove it in the negative. We can get like stun locked. Be like, I don't know what to do, and like I feel like I've seen some like funny videos like on whatever like Instagram where like animals will look like they get stun locked, and it's funny because animals don't usually act that way. They don't usually do that. Yeah. Anyway.
So you just came and sat down on it. You must believe it's there because you had a pretty strong level of confidence that you wouldn't just like fall down into the earth. And it's just there. You just have that belief as a result of like stimulations of your sense data. It just kind of happens. And in fact, even with something like sense perception, I don't know what you think about this as a science man, but like we think that we've got these sort of just windows into reality, that we kind of like we exist sort of up here in our skull, and then our eyes are like the windows and ears, and we just sort of experience the world as it is, like looking out of a window. When it seems pretty plausible to me that actually we're kind of like a bit of a machine that has a bunch of sensors on the outside. And a helpful analogy for this that I like to talk about, like I borrowed from Bernardo Castro, is like being in an airplane, flying an airplane with the window shut. Yeah, because you can do it because there are sensors on the outside and it gives you all the information on the dashboard. But the information on the dashboard is not the clouds and the air pressure. And so maybe I can say we're doing a similar kind of thing.
That's basically right. I mean,
is it though? Is that I like to hear what you? I'm curious to hear his response, but is that really accurate? Because who was to say it was ever supposed to be like a window in the first place, right? Notice how he sets that up. Like this is what we think. We think it's just I think that ultimately he's arguing against a position that I don't think anybody actually believes. I don't think anybody actually believes it feels like having a window into reality. I don't think anybody ever claimed to believe that. I don't think there's like some Osmosis Jones character over my brain running everything. Like, we are just, it's sensors. Yes, he's right. But like, it's so disingenuous because nobody ever thought that it was as clear as like looking out of a window, right? Because you're looking out of the window. That means you're using a sensory apparatus of sight, which is actually functionally and materially a different thing than the act of looking out the window or the window itself. God, it's very sticky philosophically, metaphysically. That's why you have to be careful with your words when you talk at this level. And most people aren't. Even them right now, they're like borderline equivocating at certain points or speaking poetically, but you can't do that. You have to get specific, especially at the foundational level. But people just feel like they can just toss words around. And yeah, it's really damaging to do this. Very damaging.
They call it the sensorium, and the different animals, different species have different sensoria, and like you and I might have different sensoria. You know, you might hear differently, you might see differently, like and like it seems interestingly, it seems like across the species, the sensorium is pretty consistent. Like red is probably kind of red to you. It's probably kind of red to me. Like that stuff seems to be roughly the same. But taste and smell are too. That definitely can be quite different from person to person. But much bigger than that is like bats or dolphins. You know, it's stuff that like fish see very differently than we do.
So see, he still
there's lots of sensations
that
like
there are
fields that we don't have.
things,
There's colors that we can't see that other animals can see. And that just like sort of proves the point that like this that I'm seeing right now is the version of reality. So there's a thing like I don't think that the things don't exist. Exactly. People are like that. Some people are like, I don't get that. But the things are there, and like there's something happening, and I'm detecting that, and that is allowing me to move around in the world. But this, like what I'm seeing, isn't the world. This is this stuff is like bats or dolphins. You know, it's stuff that like fish see very differently than you.
Metaphysical claims here.
And there's lots of sensations like electrical fields that we don't have. There's colors that we can't see that other animals can see. And that just like sort of proves the point that like this that I'm seeing right now is the version of reality. So there's a thing like I don't think that the things don't exist.
Exactly.
People are like that. Some people are like that. I don't get that. But the things are there, and like there's something happening, and I'm detecting that, and that is allowing me to move around in the world. But this, like what I'm seeing, isn't the world. This is the version of the world that I am able to detect, which is different from other animals.
Yeah,
right.
And that came.
Notice how that means that there still is fundamentally a world that he's detecting. There has to be if you're detecting a version of something, that means fundamentally you are detecting the underlying something itself, right? You're detecting a version of it. So it doesn't mean like that's why this idea that like all of reality is some kind of illusion, like that guy said to me today. It's like it's just you can't. As you're standing here speaking to me, you're disproving your own claim, right? Like. Obviously this is not illusory because something is happening here. Like what is this then, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Mind, because when you were talking about illusions that you kind of know are illusions, but believe in anyway. Somebody who's religious might listen to something like that and go like, this isn't an illusion. Like this isn't just a made up thing. It's like there are illusions that we can talk about that are so fundamental, but they are as sort of true as like the chair that I'm looking at right now. So like to say something is an illusion isn't to say that there isn't something real, something that causes it, and that it serves an important purpose, and that it's like there really is something going on, but that somehow our interaction with it or our description with it isn't the thing itself. I think theologians agree with that. That like if there is a God who created the universe and exists like timelessly and limitlessly, then as long as you are imagining something, you are like not imagining that thing because you can't. It's like not what your brain is capable of doing.
Right. Yeah. And like I find this. I find that there's so many more interesting things than that. And like that's like one of my big problems with like not with the idea of a God, but like with my ability to engage with it. Where I'm just like, nah, like it feels a little bit like whatever is mysterious. Or like it's like a morphing definition, which is very like it's unfalsifiable. So it's sort of like always out there like a thing, and it does feel a little bit like sort of it's about the philosophy of it. It's about like can we put words together in such an order such that we've proved that God exists, which is I don't know. That's not.
It also just seems to me like not what it's all about. Like as if I sometimes sort of imagine that you'll get to the pearly gates and God will be there, and it's like, oh, you've been a good person and you've given charity and you've believed in Christianity and you're a Lutheran. Oh, you don't agree with premise 55 of Ed Feser's 100 premise argument to the existence of God. Oh, no, sorry. It just feels like that's not what it would be about. And so traditionally theologians would look to philosophy as like faith-seeking understanding. It wasn't like the reason you believe or like the grounds for the truth, but just like, oh, well, I know that this thing's true through experience and other stuff, and I just kind of want to understand it. And Thomas Aquinas famously thought all religious language was an analogy. He thought it's literally impossible to speak about God. So God is not powerful, God is not loving, God is not knowledgeable, because these are like human concepts. You can only really say what God is not. I think that's some degree to which we are, forget the God, God's tip, we've done it. Put that to the side. This whole thing about our interaction with the world is really interesting, right?
By the way, that's like that is the culmination of what, and that makes sense, right? Basically Aquinas is saying like God is unknowable. Yet you must believe that he exists because he's the greatest conceivable being, but you can know nothing about him. just way to take epistemology and go. You can't know it. You're a lowly, stupid human who can only know certain stupid things, but God knows way more than you ever will. It's like it's just unhinged. Also, why is he so hesitant to talk religion with Hank Green? Did Hank Green have like reservations about talking about it? I don't know, man. Let's see if maybe I can get some people in my stream here, my live stream. Oh my goodness.
Create a logo for the career path I didn't choose in partnership with Adobe.
Wait, didn't Biden already do this? It says President Trump expected to reclassify marijuana as a Schedule III drug, a category reserved for drugs considered less dangerous. But he simultaneously puts a ban on most THC products. Yeah, I don't fucking know. According to Brown University's president, 2 individuals killed, 9 injured were all students. Jesus. If he is in the scene, suspect in custody, God bless the victims and the families of the victims. Brown University reversed their previous statement. The suspect is not in custody. Good one. Good one, Trump.
Create a logo for the.
Hell.
I can't with today. I literally only got 5 hours of sleep, yet I have to sit here in this stupid class. Yeah? Try 30 and a vending machine was out of monsters. Kill me. Okay, try being me. I literally can't even afford monsters because I'm so fucking broke. Yeah, well, the only reason I can afford monsters is because I go into crippling debt from them because I have a caffeine addiction. Oh, so we're gonna talk about addictions now. Yeah, I'm addicted to watching gore. I just love seeing the way the bodies move around. I find it interesting. See, I can't even watch gore because I got into a tragic car accident when I was 3.
God, all these people were my friends back in the day. That's why it's making me cringe.
I don't give a shit because I came through much worse. Yeah, try being me with a lot of unhealed trauma from your family life. Last night, my mom even yelled at me to take out the trash. No wonder I'm so fucked up. Yeah, well, try not having a girlfriend like, oh yeah, ever. We get it. You guys are both miserable. Oh, miserable's an understatement, pal. I think I've been through much worse than just miserable.
I think these kids were neurodivergent, though. Isn't that the point? Dick Van Dyke turns 100. He says singing is the best thing you can do for yourself? Probably. Keeps you young. Oh, I didn't even realize that shooting happened. It's just that's when I wanted to start doing my stuff. I'm just gonna keep watching this. I don't know. I don't think anybody's gonna come. Nobody's online today.
Because it feels like I don't know. How do you imagine yourself? Like, who is Hank Green? Is he like a brain in a skull? Is he like a self that imposes on material stuff? Like, what is?
I imagine myself day to day the same way everybody else does. Just like the sort of I think that this is a not real thing, but like I imagine that I have like this continuity of self through my whole life, and that has added up into like this thing. It's a story that I'm like that on the inside of my head. Like the self is myself is a story that I'm telling to myself about myself. I think that that's mostly what we're doing.
Yeah,
and I think that that's the normal way, and it's like the useful way. I don't think that exists. So like for example, if something happened to me in 4th grade that I do not remember, and if someone told me about it, I would be like, I don't remember that happened. Is that kid still alive? Like, is that self a part of the self? Stories are very powerful. They're like
No, that part of yourself is dead. You're recalling a memory of what happened. A memory is something you hold in your mind that is like the projected image of an event that metaphysically occurred prior to the current time. So I just don't get this. Like, why are we saying? Why are we? It's like he doesn't like solipsism, but he like concedes on so much of their critiques, right? There is no self. What do you mean there is no self? Like, You can't get a sense of who a person is by amalgamating their character traits, habits, character flaws. Hello? The self is a story we tell about ourselves? I mean, I guess in some sense, yeah, but it's not a story. It's more of a report, right? I don't like to use the word story because it makes it sound fake. It's a report. I'm constantly reporting back to the world like the things that we do, right? And that's who we are. We are what we do. That's what I think. You are what you do. That's who you truly are, right? I mean, to some extent, what you think, but if the things that you think lead you to do something completely different, well, what matters then is the things you're doing, and then it doesn't really matter what you're thinking. With your thought, the only thing that matters is that your thoughts are you're living in cognitive dissonance. You need to change to either like what you're doing or what you're thinking, because you're doing opposite, right? That's not. You can't live like that.
The basis of so much of what's interesting about humans. So I'm not saying that it's not a good, cool, useful, evolved, like selected for tool. The self, yeah. But yeah, I don't think that like even so. As another example, so since I went through cancer treatment, I get these flare ups of, and I have no idea what they are, and I just like feel awful. Like I feel like I get this, like my skin hurts and my knees hurt, and I have fatigue, and I have like very low motivation to do anything. And so if myself is like a collective of abilities and characteristics, when I'm having these flare ups, am I a different self? Because I have different abilities and characteristics when I'm having a flare. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, let me know. Those doctors are confused. And it's gotten much more rare, but like it happened a lot right after I finished chemo and radiation. And I'm like, so like what? Like if I'm not that, then what? And I just think that all of those things go into how I act in the world and how I behave.
You navigate
everything I know, everything I've learned, all the relationships I've had, like all the memories that I have, and all the fears and anxieties that were built by all these experiences I've had. Like all that stuff goes into how I act in the individual moment.
Because other people have also undergone cancer treatment. And what you just said, right? If anybody knows, let me know. I'm assuming other people have also experienced these flare-ups. So that's like something that all people can experience. Every single instance of that experience. Every single instance of that experience is going to be different because the person going through it. So Hank Green is going to react differently to that flare-up than say like I would, or like my mom would, or my professor would, or my neighbor would. Right? Like everybody's different. You're going to react differently. So it's I don't get what he means by like you don't become a different person. You have a different reaction, but the reaction is going to be based on who you are. So, yeah.
And I think that is a thing, but that's not what I think of as myself. Like, I don't think of myself as the actor acting now. I think of myself as the story of the whole thing, and like I'm totally comfortable with that not being real, but also being what I am.
Yeah, but it's really annoying how embedded it is into our language, right? Like the way you have to say something like, I don't believe in the self. It's like, okay, wait, hold on, pause for a second.
Well, that's because I think that these things are evolved for a reason. I think that they're tools that we have for a reason. And I'd love to ask you about this question. So I have this problem where I think things like this, like that I know that aren't real.
Yeah, but what is the I? Then what is the I? Yeah. So weird. Then what is the I? Explain that. What are we referring to when we say I? Me. I believe this. People point to their heart. Right? Even if you were to take the brain away, okay? We're like this moving automaton with like blood pumping to all of the various subsystems that's connected to the central system. Like pumps the blood and is the central nervous system, right? Your nerves, pain, pleasure. It's like blood, pain, pleasure. These are like the fundamentals of human anatomy, right? And it also gets down to the fundamentals of human philosophy, right? The most primitive version of morality is the pain pleasure mechanism. And that's what ultimately it comes back to that. It all comes back to that, right? We're just trying to move towards pleasure and move away from pain. And then just morality is just a far more layered and sophisticated version of that practice. But to say that the self does not exist, I think is not only incorrect, it's also not as, it's not like useful in the way that they're saying like, well, it's useful to think that we have a self. I just feel like this is some like cringy way to be like, there is no self, so we all need to be selfless, because they just, again, they automatically see as like, you have to die an ego, the ego death. Yeah. I just think that appeals to them, but the sense they like, we have an ego. You have an ego. You are yourself. You are like your thoughts and opinions. And those came from a lot of things that you continuously, habitually did. Right. And you discovered these things. Now, the great thing about that, right? Your thoughts and opinions come from the things that you do and discovered in the world. We have access to those things and we can like fact check you on that stuff. So, and again, fact check you. Who is you? It's like the conscious experience. And also, yeah, if there's no us, then who are we protecting? What are we protecting? Well, we have like rights. I think this is very damaging. This is so destructive to say that the self is an illusion, right? And it's a helpful myth. It's not a helpful myth. There is a self. It's a clearly defined thing. It's a thing we're referring to. When I die, where do I go? What happens to me? I'm dead. I'm not here anymore. The body that gets left behind, or the body that's left, right? Because I don't want to say left behind, because I don't think there's a soul that goes anywhere, right? But me, that conscious experience, that's a conscious experience, right? That is us. You have an internal sense of being in here, right? That's the self. That what I'm doing, it's the free will. It's the part of us that does that focus. That is the self. Right there. It's like when people just have a way of choosing these things, we don't really understand why. That's the self engaging in its limited free will. That's what they're missing here.
But they are biological. Like they are like free will is a good example. So I'm feeling this. There's a very good chance that it's an illusion. Like that, if you just sort of like started the initial conditions, I would end up where I am again, and there would never have been a moment where I actually could have changed any of this. But I feel it, and I think that like it seems almost necessary to be.
Again, maybe that's technically true, right? And the same set of conditions we always would have made the exact same decision. But this comes down to, what do you believe about value theory? How do we determine our values? Well, it depends on what's factual. Well, just because something's factual doesn't mean that that's the thing you should do. Doesn't mean that's the right choice. Right? But it's always going to come down to what level of information you have. I mean, yeah. Sure. Because, well, and see, I think that makes sense, because there's one right answer. We don't always get the right answer, but there is one right answer. I'm part of the one right answer crew.
To be a actor in the world, to have free will, to imagine free will.
Yeah.
So I think that it's both fake and biologically selected for. So like the illusion is biologically selected for, and it's really deep down. So it's not it's real in the way that the chair is.
Yeah.
But there are other things like that I think are also selected for. Maybe not in the same way. Well, probably some things are the same way. But as an example, like superstition or a god or a religion, those things are culturally selected for.
Yeah.
And so if I'm like okay with accepting a fiction of free will and just like saying like, well, my body is meant to feel this, should I also be okay with like accepting the fiction of and like wholly accepting the fiction of a religion or of xenophobia, like another thing that's selected for. So like obviously I don't feel okay about like
this is the problem. He's making a separate category, right? So he doesn't have the cognitive dissonance of, well, and this is exactly how theists try to undermine. They do this all the time, saying everything's an illusion. So if all we're doing is just believing in helpful illusions, religion is just one more helpful illusion. That's why it's so damaging when you go back and say that it's just an illusion. Now he's got to jump through some hoops and make up some category bullshit, so he doesn't have to believe the logical conclusion of what he believes.
Of course, we're all afraid of outsiders. That's like a thing.
Yeah.
It's like selected for by culture and by probably biologically as well. And so but like you have to push against that. But I don't feel like I have to push against everything. And so I guess I'm curious what you think about all of that.
I think, yeah, whether you should or shouldn't is an impossible question to answer. But it's interesting that sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, right? Like you kind of know that the chair, as you're interacting with it, is a bit of an illusion, but you're willing to kind of say, but that's just how I interact with the chair. As far as I'm concerned, the only world that exists is the world that I perceive. So if I perceive a world with a chair in it, then like, what does it mean to say that this is real?
Yeah.
If like the only possible way in principle I could ever even interact with it would be through a different way. It would be as if like you were constantly dreaming. You were only ever in a dream. That's like all you experience. And someone kind of said to you, hey man, like, you're in a thing called a dream, and like outside of the dream there's, you could be like, cool, like, interesting man, but like it would make more sense if you would say,
it wouldn't be helpful to your consciousness to be like, oh, I guess everything's fake.
Exactly. And it would actually make more sense, I think, for you to use the word real to describe what's in the dream, and like fake or other to describe what you never get to experience, right? So yeah, okay, so if an illusion like God is like that, then why not? The problem is I don't think it's quite as fundamental. Some people claim it is. Some people are like, you believe in God and you know it deep down in your heart.
Oh yeah, that's got to be wrong, because for so many years we didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean,
we had different kinds of gods. We had ancestor gods.
Yeah, it depends what you mean though, right? Because some people will say, oh, like what really happened was you started talking about other stuff, but really that was God.
Oh well,
like when you're talking about,
I'd call that presumptuous.
So
I'd say
they literally call it presuppositionalism. Like,
sorry, I meant presumptuous.
When you like sort of have to, the idea is that you have to sort of presuppose the existence of God before anything like works. But yeah, the thing that's different for me is like there are some illusions which you cannot help but feel. There are some things which it seems literally impossible to switch off, like the freedom thing.
Yeah,
you can't just decide to like realize. I think if you meditate for long enough, maybe you can start to notice that the thoughts that are arriving in your head, elephant, there it is, isn't it kind of annoying that I've got that power over you? I can just plant that in your brain. Like, yeah, okay, you could probably become aware of that, but you couldn't like you can't really switch off that day-to-day feeling. Whereas I think the religion thing people kind of can. And again, with the xenophobia thing, people also can. It seems like people can. Yeah. They also have implicit biases and stuff, but people seem to manage to get by, roughly speaking, at least having less of that than like a sort of ancient tribesman might have done. Yeah. Whereas I think with the free will thing, not only like is it harder to do that, it might in part be harder to do that because there's just kind of like no reason to. Like for what?
Yeah.
Like, oh, great, now
well,
I'm free. Like, cool.
How does it serve?
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas some people, and of course there's debate about this, but if you're of the school that thinks that religion is like this really helpful thing in the way that xenophobia evolves to be really helpful to tribes that now isn't helpful anymore, that we actually do have reason to move away from that, and so we should resist that illusion. But why would you do that with free will or the existence of the chair? It sort of doesn't serve the same kind of sort of societal function anymore. But I don't know, like why not? It's the same thing. Sometimes when I talk about ethics and like good and bad, and I say, it's just emotional expression. That's kind of my view, that there's no objective good or bad. And people sometimes said to me that like, I just feel really strongly that certain things are bad. Torturing babies for fun is wrong. That's just and it's like, yeah, but you can't prove it, and like, blah blah blah. And people have sort of pointed out, I think plausibly, you also can't prove that like the external world exists, that the chair exists. You just feel really strongly that you've got these perceptions, and you just feel like that corresponds to the real world. So why not do the same thing with good and bad? It feels like there's good and bad. It feels like there's a God. Why not just accept it on the same grounds?
I guess because so much of what I base my sort of understanding of the world on is working really hard to eliminate all biases and to interrogate the universe in such a way that it guarantees you an answer.
Yes, and that is where today's sponsor, Ground News, comes into. Okay, we're far too late in the episode. That'll be the segue. But this episode is actually sponsored by Ground News, so thank you for that. But yeah, eliminating bias. How? Like,
I mean, that's the whole process of science.
Yeah,
one step at a time. You got to figure out where bias creeps in and try and get it out. Randomized control trials didn't come out of somebody sat down once and was like, "What about a randomized control trial? We'll double blind it." And I did it. I created the gold standard of science. It was one step at a time. Where and really what it was. Here's where it came from. And this is I think the deep at the base revolution of science is that for a lot of human history, ideas have been about having an idea and protecting it. So I have this idea. This is how I understand things. You can come at my idea, and I will defend my idea. And that's how religion still works. When we have a creationist has a debate with, this is why I don't like these debates, because it's sort of like dragging everything into the argument frame where like we're lawyers defending our clients. Yeah. When that's what science is it's saying it's instead of like this is the idea, it's like this is the idea, and have at it, tear it to pieces. And if you embarrass me, I will be embarrassed. Yes. If you discover if you find a way to prove to me that like there isn't a way for like life to start growing in the broth unless it is exposed to some other already living thing or some seed of a living thing, then I will have to sort of like tuck my tail between my legs and admit that you were right. And the way that you do that is you make your methods available. You say, here's how I did it. Or you do it in public. Like you invite people over to watch the experiment. You have people come and look through the telescope. And the other thing about it is it doesn't happen in a moment. It always feels like it does historically. Galileo looked through the telescope and was like, oh, moons of Jupiter. I guess everything's going like revolving around the sun. Yeah. It's like he said that and people were like, I think that your telescope's broken. And maybe it was because it sucked. It wasn't a good telescope. Yeah. It was an early one. They did lots of weird stuff. They had like weird artifacts that would get created by the light bouncing around inside of them. So there was all kinds of opportunity for him to have been wrong.
Yeah, interesting.
And but what it's all about is that process of saying like, I'm going like, you aren't doing this unless you are telling us how you're getting this information. And from that springs everything. It springs having a methods section. It springs the entire mathematics of statistics. It's like all of the tools that we have to try and eliminate all the little ways where we might accidentally fudge the data and make sure we never do.
Yeah, but see, Matt, but how do you know that you're not fudging the data? Right? But I guess what he's saying is it's a process, and we're never going to get it perfectly right. But that's not. You could also say that about everything else, right? It's epistemology. That's what we do. That's what we do. We just try to get it as right as we can, but we're never going to get it perfectly right. Right? But see, now notice I'm already presupposing a lot of stuff by saying everything I'm saying, right? We're never going to get it perfectly right. What's it? Right? What's everything, right? Like, means it presupposes that we exist within something, and we're doing our best to like understand what that something is. And that's all we can do. That's literally all we can do. But I don't get why it makes it like illusory or a mystery. That just is what is happening. We are here doing our best, trying to figure out what to do. Making our best effort at it. Right? Yeah, I just don't see the benefit of calling this like the self an illusion. It's not an illusion. Definitely not the same way God is. I don't even know how they got out of that. It was just it's just cultural, so it's different. Okay. I guess. But that's what I'm saying. Like it's not even an illusory. It's not illusory at all. What? What's the illusory part? Again, I can explain it just fine. I am the thoughts in my head and the actions that I do. Do those always constantly change? Yes. The self constantly changes, but there is a self that operates in the world. This is great. It's even if you want to do that, right? The self is the avatar. It's your avatar that like acts in the world. If you want to go with like the world being a video game, like that's I don't know.
So, how objective do you think science has become? Like, how much do you think it has achieved? Just generally, like where scientific progress and scientific institutions are at. How much do you think they have achieved the ability to say, yeah, like we are pretty objective in our analyses. I sort of, not that long ago, it seemed quite, like when I read about history of science, and I read about people arguing about whether the universe is eternal or whether it's not.
Yeah.
It seemed like bias was pretty strong. Einstein's famous great blunder, where he sort of adds in this cosmological constant, because like otherwise the universe had a beginning, and it was expanding or whatever, and then it turns out it's expanding, and he goes, oh, like, my bad. And it was just because of like a philosophical assumption. Right. I think people look at today, the stock image of a person in a lab coat with a test tube and think, yeah, that is the paradigm of objectivity. But are we look back on this and think, gosh, we are like, we were so biased?
When it comes to these big things, that's what we tend to think of as science. There are probably going to be, cases here and there. And like we do know that there are publication problems. Like whenever you set up a system of incentives that shapes things, like it's hard to publish a null result, and so those papers don't get published. And so if you do a meta-analysis, you never get the papers with a null result because they didn't get published, or you can't find them. So like there are things like that, but they're known, and they're like scientists are trying to figure out and go after them. There's also people who will lie. Like there's fraud in science sometimes, where people and they're like forensic investigators who are working to uncover labs that are publishing fudged data and pictures that are photoshopped, and it's like that's a thing that happens.
What's the motivation for scientists to lie about data?
Publishing, get more papers published, which helps you get better jobs and helps you get grants come along with that, and you get paid partially for the grants. And
I want to ask you a slightly broader question.
But before we get to that, I will say there's a lot, like most of what science is very incremental, and that stuff is there's just like lots of boring everyday good science being done, and we are learning a ton about the universe through that work.
Well, the question I was going to ask is, it sort of sounds naive, but the basic questions are sometimes the best ones. What is science? And I don't mean that in a sort of like, you're teaching a classroom of kids for the first time. Science is how we found. I mean, like, what is science? What are we doing? Like, what counts as science?
I think that like as I have tried to interrogate that question for myself, because I ended up with this wonderful job that I have. I think that it really is. It is the act of saying this is what I think. I've observed the universe. I've tried to ask the universe a question in this way. And I think this was a good way. So like that's number one. Like at the root, that probably is science. So science is asking the universe a question in a way that it might answer. And then what we think of as science. So like that's like babies do that. Every human throughout all of humanity pre like Neanderthals did that. But there are probably non-humans on Earth right now doing that. But what we think of as science is doing that in such a way where you say, tear this to pieces.
Yes. Yeah, for the record, a few times when you said, like, science doesn't do this, it does this, you've been open, for those listening, you've sort of been opening your hand like a flower, and it's sort of like, giving something to the world to be attacked. I mean, so much of science is about falsifying a view rather than proving it. It's like, here's my theory, and now we're going to try to prove it false. And if it can't, then we've got good reason to believe it.
And then a lot of what people think of as science is scientific consensus. So it's the stuff that has been interrogated like for decades, and over that time, it has been so good at explaining the phenomena we see that everybody's sort of agreeing on it. And things I've been lucky enough to live in a time where I got to see that happen a few times. Like when I was a kid, there was no consensus around there being a meteorite that killed the dinosaurs or a comet or whatever else. And now that's a thing. Like there's just consensus around that. We have all kinds of data that confirms that, and it explains all kinds of things that we see.
Okay, just as a footnote here, at the moment, is there something that there is like a wacky, like wild, no consensus thing you really just wish we could figure out, like something kind of specific?
Oh, I don't know.
You just like, I want us to work out if that is how that happens.
Nothing's coming to mind immediately.
For me, it's probably some like brain science thing.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to find like consciousness in there somewhere.
That would be good. That would be to find consciousness in someone else's brain. I mean, that would be really cool rather than just my own, which I should do every day, for better or worse. I'm quite wrapped up in a debate at the moment, by which I mean I ask people about this and they have different views. I speak to scientists about what science does. I mean, you just said that science explains things. There's a kind of debate as to whether science actually explains anything at all, or whether it's better to say that science like describes things. An example I always give is Isaac Newton, who like discovers gravity. And what does he discover? Well, he just discovers that the same thing that makes objects fall keeps planets in orbit.
Right.
But
and then later we discover that it's a warping of space-time.
Exactly.
But like why?
And it's still like people often think, okay, so Newton described gravity and then we improved on it, and now we. But what actually happened was Isaac Newton discovered this thing that happened, that objects fall and that planets move, and that it's the same thing. And then he mathematically described it, and then he wrote explicitly in the second edition of the Wikipedia. But I don't know what gravity like is. I don't know why it does that. I just know this is how it does it. Einstein comes along and comes up with a sort of better way of picturing. It's actually a space-time fabric, and objects sort of bend. But we still don't know like why it does that. And some people want to say, well, that's because what science does is it keeps asking until we figure out why. Or is science just getting better and better at like describing what's happening and making predictions about the future, but never able to really tell us why stuff happens?
You're refining definitions.
So natural selection is a good example of an
but that's, again, that's
so. If a single-cell organism figures out a new way to metabolize nutrient food, that food source is abundant, but nobody else can metabolize it, it starts metabolizing it, and then it divides. And now there's 2 that can metabolize this new food. And then there's 4, and then there's 8. Like this is mechanistic. I'm not telling you like that something is happening. I'm not describing anything that's happening. I'm telling you how it's happening. This is how life on Earth happened, and that's like a pretty big thing. And if 10 generations later, there's like that gene that allowed for that microorganism to digest that new kind of food is like starting to take over the population.
And
of
natural
those
selection
microbes,
itself tells you how
generations later. There's no microbe left that doesn't have that gene.
Bullshit.
And that allows you to respond to the environment. It allows you to, and the environment is constantly changing. So it's made of other self-replicators, and like this is biology. This is ecology. This is all the beautiful, engaging stuff that David Attenborough's going to tell you about. And so the like that is actually. And I think that it can get there, but like now you can start to say like, okay, but they're made of atoms and we don't know what electrons are. But like we know, and in the same way we know about like Newtonian mechanics to some extent is like it's good at describing stuff, but it's also like kind of the thing that's happening. Things are colliding. Energy it is moving from it like the energy in a system isn't going anywhere. It's staying inside of the system. Like it can't be destroyed.
It feels like what mechanics are describing are those interactions. Like when you say there are sort of it is doing this, it is doing that. But what the scientist is kind of telling you, this is what people will say, is that the scientist is telling you what it does, and the scientist can't tell you what it like is. My friend Philip Goff has a helpful analogy here with chess, where if you ask a chess player, like, what is a bishop? They'll say, oh, it's that which can only legally move diagonally. Right? And you're like, yeah, but what is it? And they're like, what do you mean? Like that's just what a bishop is. It's just like what it does. And similarly, a scientist, when you say what's an electron, and they say, oh, it's a negatively charged particle, and you say, but negative charge is kind of described by what something does. What like is it? And they go, it just is what it does. But if you ask if a carpenter came along and was like, what's that bishop made out?
Yeah, but it is what it does, though. I mean, but that's okay. God, so I want to see that. He thinks he's making such a good point. He's so smug look on his fucking face. It's like it's not. Yes, we get it. Like people see things from different angles. Like everybody sees a different side of the elephant. Okay, but it's an elephant. Okay, but see that's the point. But it is an elephant. There is an underlying thing that is true. Doesn't matter if we're seeing it from a different angle or we see it with a different purpose in mind. It is the thing. There is a thing there. There's a thing there. And some people can be more right than others about what that thing is. Or they can be closer to the truth.
And the guy said, oh, well, I just asked Chester about that. He said, it's a thing which moves diagonally. He'd be like, that's like the least helpful thing you possibly could have said to me. And the philosopher, I think, comes in and wants to know, like, why do the molecules split? Why does, absorbing energy make me bigger? Why does being near an object of mass bend space-time so I'm attracted to it? And like, what is an electron, I mean, I think that a lot of what you're talking about is what we're talking, like, stuff at the edge. And there are, I don't know, there's reason to believe that the edge will always be there. Yeah. But when the natural selection example, like, that is mechanistic. You're saying, like, we're not describing. This is how it happens. In the same way, like plate tectonics. Like, here's why mountains exist. It's because, like, they're atoms, and so there's a mystery deep down inside of the mountain. But like, we know why the Himalayas are there, and we didn't used to. Yeah, I think for myself, it depends on your level of analysis. Because I think, like, okay, yeah, so you could say, like, why the Himalayas there? Because of plate tectonics, right? Yeah. And it's only if you there, and that is a true answer to that question. That is actually why they're there. But then if you become like a real pedant, like a child, keep saying, like, why? Then if you actually followed that chain all the way down to the bottom, you would end up somewhere like, atomic physics, and you'd end up essentially describing. So it depends on your level of analysis. I keep giving this example to different scientists to see like what they think of it. I'll be interested to see what you think of this actually. So I'm like, imagine like I blow a trumpet. It's annoying that I could have done it better, but this is what it's been now, so we'll run with it. If I blew a trumpet and a light turned on just over there, like a red light, and I worked out that if I blow the trumpet louder, it's brighter, and if I blow a different note, like it's blue, and I test it over and over again, and then I sort of make this prediction. I'm like, okay, I think if I play a G flat at this exact decibel, that it'll be an insertion, and it's perfect. And so I've mapped it all out, and I know now exactly how those things correlate, and I can make predictions about how to do it. And so I blow the trumpet, and the light turns on, and somebody goes, wow, like, why did the light turn on? And I say, oh, because I blew the trumpet. Right. Have I explained why the light turns on or not? And some scientists I speak to go, yeah, you have. And I'm like, I don't know, man. And it feels to me like when someone says, well, we know why the Himalayas are there because of plate tectonics. That's a bit like saying, we know why the light turned on. We worked out it's because of the trumpet. Okay, but like, why does blowing the trumpet turn the light on, So you can kind of keep going. But you recognize that, so with the light, I think that is analogous to a lot of subatomic physics. Yeah. We're like, like we don't have a theory here that ties it all together. Yeah. But I think that if you were able to like go up to the light and take apart the light and find inside of the light a microphone.
Thank you. All you have to do with these motherfucking people that want to be I'm Mr. Skeptical, I'm Mr. Smart Philosopher, man. I'm just gonna endlessly critique everything and just confuse the fuck out of everybody and be incredibly unhelpful at this time in history. We can't have solipsism and cynicism and skepticism. Like, you're like 10 years too late, Alex. Okay, Hank is based. He understands what we need. He understands the mission. Okay, he's defending science. Doing the Lord's work. God, the God of science. God of reality. Right? He's saying, if you go up to the light, if you go up to the cow, the fake cow, the illusion melts. Because you can take it apart, you can see how it works with your own eyes. Fuck you, Alex.
Yes. And a transistor, and you can like send the transistor off to a lab and be like, reverse engineer this for me, tell me what it does. There's like a Raspberry Pi in there. Yeah. And you're like, well, now like mechanistically I do understand, but you still don't know what the atoms of the transistor are made of. Right. So I think it's got to be both, right? Yeah. And so like it is to some extent like how useful is how useful is the tool? Yeah. So like if we understand plate tectonics, it like explains a lot of things. Yeah. And it depends on the context in which you're asking. In that, like if you said, oh, like Alex, why are you wearing a jacket? And I said, because it's cold. You'd be like, okay. But if you were some alien creature who didn't have like sense data on your skin and didn't understand that there was the cold was then me saying because it's cold would prompt you to then go, what's that and why does that do that and why? So, but because in the context we sort of got this baseline agreement, we can say, oh, you wore it because it's cold. I would love to explain cold to an alien.
Yeah, right.
That would be so fun.
Yeah, but I think it would be
but it's totally doable. Okay. Good debate.
Next time. What do you mean?
Well, so like
you mean an alien who couldn't feel cold?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't explain the sensation to them.
So what could you explain?
I could say, so the way that our bodies function chemically is that we have like these molecules, and they function optimally when there's a certain amount of energy in the system. And if there's not enough energy in the system, they stop working, and our like the thing that is us, like the continuity that is like our bodies, stops. And like they probably have some analog for that. And so our bodies tell us when we get even a little bit, we start to get even a little bit close to that, it's a little unpleasant. When we get very close to that, it's very unpleasant. But even when we're like just a couple of degrees off, when we have a little bit more or less energy than is optimal for our bodies, our bodies send us signals and they say, this isn't optimal. And it's a little unpleasant. Like the sensation is unpleasantness.
I suppose the alien said to you, like, what's that? What's unpleasant? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's an aversion signal. So it's a signal
and then they say, my spaceship has an aversion signal.
Yeah.
Well, so that's kind of, the spaceship's feeling cold?
Well, the question is, does this alien also have consciousness?
Yeah. Okay, but then if it has consciousness, but not that kind of consciousness.
Yeah. So imagine, so like alien, please give me an example of a qualia. Like, give me.
Also, an inversion signal from what? Is an inversion signal like? I mean, in a sense, your plane is programmed to avoid things that harm it. Yeah. So that's a good analog. Again, it's an analog. It's not going to be perfectly, because it's not the same thing, right? But it is a good analog. The plane is programmed. The nature of the plane is that it's programmed to go away from things that do harm to it. That's actually a perfect descriptor of pain. Yeah. Our pain receptor does the same fucking thing. It's programmed. It's in its nature to move away from things that do harm to it. Yes. That's exactly what pain is. Good job. See, like, yeah, Hank explained it. He explained it. That's it. But then Alex Cuckner wants to keep going, why?
Me something that you feel.
Yeah.
That like drives you in a either toward or away from.
I wonder if maybe the reason why we just said opposite things is because we're talking about two different things, which is there's like the physical processes that like correlate with the experience or the qualia, and then there's the experience of the qualia itself, right? I mean, you did crash course psychology some 10, 11 years ago, 9 years ago?
Something like that.
About a decade ago, and you did the consciousness thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know to what extent doing that or thinking about that like gave you like hardline views about this, but you probably, like, you're familiar with, I imagine, Mary's Room, the thought experiment. Have you come across this? I talk about this sometimes. I talk about this a lot. Sorry to my audience who have heard me bang on about the same things over and over again, but I think it is really useful, which is this. Mary is in a room, and it's black and white. There's no color. She's born in this room. And what she does is she gets given like every single possible bit of information that it could, in principle, ever even possible.
Yes, I have heard
to write about blue, right? Yeah. And so she knows everything there is to know about blue that can even possibly be written down onto a piece of paper. And then at the end of her life, she walks outside, she sees something blue. Has she learned something new? And the answer seems to be yes. And can we agree that like we couldn't explain that thing
for sure
to an alien? Absolutely. But isn't that what like cold is?
Well, it could be. I mean, so like you can define things in many different ways. So like it's called the sensation of cold, or is called the tool that has evolved to like help us survive.
I think that is the difference, and that's why we disagree about whether you can explain it to an alien.
The tool involves the sensation. If we couldn't feel the sensation of cold, we wouldn't have the tool. The tool is the sense. The tool is feeling the sensation. That's part of the tool. That's why these guys. This is why scientists need philosophy, right? Ultimately, Hank Green is smart and good at science and everything, but like so far, he was doing the philosophy okay when he felt like a need to like rigidly defend science in a grounded way, right? But he doesn't care about anything else that's not like, as long as he can like defend his corner of the world, he's good. Yeah.
We're talking about two different things. But look, if you can explain to an alien like some mechanistic process by which organisms, move from cold into hot, like it's cool you can do that, but it kind of suddenly becomes a little bit uninteresting. Do you know, it becomes like, it's like a little bit like, okay, like, it's a bit like explaining explaining to an alien that like tectonics or something. Like, it's cool, it's interesting, yeah, we've got this thing, cool. And they'd be like, oh, nice, so your rocks kind of like bump into it, yeah, sweet, man, that's cool. But if you said to them, oh, by the way, when they do that, it comes along with this like intangible experience.
Well, that's what I think. I think that the alien has consciousness. Yeah. And so they might not have hot and cold because maybe their chemistry, I don't see how this will happen, but their chemistry doesn't require it. But if they have sensations, like there are things that they sense, it would be it's so hard for me to imagine a complex living system, like a multicellular organism that doesn't have experience.
Yeah, there's a really famous essay that was written by Thomas Nagel in the 70s called "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" And it's a sort of really groundbreaking philosophical essay because, like, you can imagine being a bat, and the reason he uses a bat is because the bats can see, can't they? They're not actually blind, but they echolocate, right? And you can imagine being a bat in the sense that you can imagine being yourself, like you imagine hanging upside down, like clicking around, trying to get around. But that's not imagining what it's like to be a bat. That's imagining what it's like to be you pretending to be a bat. Yeah. Right? But what it's actually like to be a bat for a bat. His essential conclusion from this essay is that it's not possible to know. It's not possible to take that experiential thing and reduce it to scientific explanation or put it into words. And yeah, we know that there are animals that can sense like infrared, and we can't. And we can like mimic it by like an infrared camera, but we're not seeing infrared there. We're seeing normal color.
Yeah, I mean, echolocation is much weirder. Yeah. To me, it's like, oh, infrared, maybe it's another color. Like imagine all the colors, but with more. Yeah. I can kind of do that. But with echolocation, they're not like clicking and having it, and like, I don't know, like what is it? What are they experiencing? Because it's not one of our senses. Yeah. It's not like one of our senses turned up or down or with like a wider range. It's a whole other one. Yeah. Well, like what does it feel like? Does it smell? Does it taste? Does it its own thing? Does it receive? Probably we know whether it's somebody's put it bad in an fMRI. Probably knows that it's what part of the brain is activating. So they might see sound. Who cares what part of the brain is activated? Because because again, to us, now we're the aliens, right? Yeah. And we look at the echolocation. Oh, that's cool. That's interesting. But the thing that really grits us is like, what is that like? Like the birds who can navigate using magnetic field. What are they feeling? What is that? Yeah. Well, here's like, isn't this cool that we have like hunger is not like sight, like two sensations. They're not like each other, but they are like each other. And so I kind of imagine like inside of me there's like a central trading post, and everybody's trading like fish for berries, and like fish and berries are totally different things. Like just like hunger and fear are totally different things. But like there's something inside of me that's like, okay, well you have all of these things, and so we have to like weigh all of this stuff. We have to weigh anxiety, we have to weigh love, we have to weigh cold, we have to weigh thirst, all of these things at the same time, and pain like the original one, like it's got to be the first sensation.
Yeah, either that or like
the most pure sensation too. Like
actually, it must be. I was going to say maybe it's like light. People think about sort of light perception, but then you kind of have to. For that to be useful, there needs to be some rudimentary sense in which you like want the light and you don't want the dark, or vice versa.
Just like want is the craziest thing. Yeah, and it's almost like all of those currencies add up to the want.
I think so. I mean, it seems to me that
Yeah.
All action requires want, because in order to do anything, you need, at least consciously, you need to sort of want the world to be a way that it's not. Otherwise, you can't. Even if it's like really rudimentary. And I think want kind of requires some semblance of like pain and pleasure, because like to have a preference is kind of to say, you know, this is better than this, which means I prefer this to this, which means at least comparatively this is like bad, I don't like, and that's kind of what pain is.
Yeah, I mean, if you go far enough down, if you think of like ciliates, like I don't think. Maybe you disagree. I don't think that they have sensations. I don't think that they feel. I think that there's a gradient of acid, and they're not moving away toward it. There's a gradient of light, and they're not moving away toward it. Is that still kind of? It's not want in the way that we think, but it is acting in the world to make the world the way that is better for you.
Yeah.
But at some point, like the place where that transitions into sensation.
Hold on. This is where Rand has the better definition. I'm sorry to say it. She has a much more apt and like robust definition of what life is. Ayn Rand life. Sorry, definition. There we go. Go to the lexicon. Maybe when she talks about the ethics. The objectivist ethics, only a living entity can have goals or can originate them. And it is only a living organism that has the capacity for self-generated, goal-directed action. On the physical level, the functions of all living organisms, from the simplest to the most complex, from the nutritive function in the single cell of an amoeba to the blood circulation in the body of a man, are actions generated by the organism itself and directed to a single goal, the maintenance of the organism's life. An organism's life depends on two factors: the material or fuel which it needs from the outside, from its physical background, and the action of its own body, the action of using that fuel properly. What standard determines what is proper in this context? The standard is the organism's life, or that which is required for the organism's survival. Stillness is the antithesis of life. Life can be kept in existence only by a constant process of self-sustaining action. The goal of that action, the ultimate value which to be kept must be gained through its every moment, is the organism's life. Anyway, self-generated, self-sustained action. That's it. That's what it is. That's what life is.
Like that just seems to me like a thing that would evolve. You know, it seems like it's there's just too much to have it be like a math equation where it's a bunch of chemicals receiving signals and thus resulting in an action. Eventually, you have to have the central trading post where all of these sensations is kind of turned into like one thing.
Yeah, and is that what experience is?
Yeah.
Because it seems like the great mystery in the philosophy of mind, the so-called hard problem of consciousness, is this weirdness of adding together like atoms, a bunch of like material, and then you get like
this thing out that feels different to people.
The taste of Coca-Cola. Yeah. It's not even like you don't just get, you know, the brain activity correlated with it. It's like you get
this thing,
the taste of Coca-Cola. And there are a few issues with that. Firstly, they seem to be different kinds of things. I've sometimes compared it to like taking a bunch of tangerines, and if you just put them in the right order, then you get like the concept of divorce. It just doesn't make sense.
I don't like, I'm not sure I agree, but I understand what you mean.
But here's the other thing, the so-called China brain experiment, which you may or may not have heard of. I'm throwing all these, I hate when someone names something.
That at all,
Have you heard of this? And you're like, no. And then they start describing it, like, yeah, yes, I have heard of it.
I didn't know.
Now I get it. So it's this idea that like, if all that a brain is just like, you know, neurons sort of firing information, just information moving around, and if you just have enough information moving the right way in a complex organization, you get the taste of Coca-Cola, you get single consciousness. Then in theory, you could replicate this. You actually need many, many, many more people than are in China. But yeah, they picked China because
there was a lot of people.
And you just imagine that you take a brain, and for every single neuron in your brain, there is a human being somewhere on some planet with like a little, you know, sticky note passing a bit of information, and you replicate it one for one. Would there
I've not heard of this one.
This big taste of Coca-Cola, like in China, like, because it seems like
that wouldn't happen.
But how can you say that? Because if all that the sensational experience is just the movement of information in the right way, well, I've got the same thing. It's just like bigger. So some people say like, yeah.
There's a key piece of information you're fucking missing there, you retard. You're missing that the sensory apparatus cannot be shared among human beings in a metaphysical sense. We each have our own sense of perception. We each have our own digestive system. We each have our own reproductive system. We each have our own respiratory system that is exclusive to us. We don't share this. We don't have a collective stomach. We don't help digest each other's food. We don't help have each other's babies. Only the person that you physically hook up to is the person you have a baby with. Because, you know, the physical, sensational world still matters. At least I thought it did.
I guess it would. Yeah, I guess there would be a big China brain, but you seem to think that there wouldn't be?
You know, I haven't spent a ton of time with the thought experiment yet. But there's like some mechanistic problems there where it's not all binary, so it's not like passing a node or anything. But that could be solved.
Yeah, we could solve that.
It would be really weird. It would be really weird. I think so. Like the brain will always be the final frontier. You know, it's very strange. So like most complicated thing in the known universe outside of all the other brains. And I think that we're like still quite at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested, like the question of like when or whether a computer will suffer, which is kind of the China brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Is really interesting, and not like we've had this script in this iShow pitch document for years, and like we just can't write it.
What about when a computer will suffer?
Yeah, when will a computer suffer?
Yeah. Well, is it when will it suffer, or will it ever suffer? Like,
I mean, Alex, it's whichever title gets more clicks. But yeah, I don't know. I think that they are. They are the same question, kind of, because there's like the first step and then the second. So if they will, when will?
I guess when the answer could be never.
Yeah,
so, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. That is the kind of the China brain, except instead of people passing notes,
It's
it's like 0 to 1 on a computer.
Yeah, somehow. And like I think the answer is if the title is will a computer ever suffer? I feel like or could. I feel like the answer is yes, because like that's I think that all the things that happen in the brain I think the consciousness is emergent of the cells, not of the universe.
It's interesting that you say no to the China brain, but yes to the computer.
I know,
and I wonder if that's like just because of how we like going to move this.
Well, I think that's why it's such a good thought experiment, because it really separates you from it really pulls you out of the intangible.
Yeah, because it's like maybe it's just because it's easier for us to like. Yeah, imagine a computer that's very complex because we
know what's going on in there. Just like I know what's going on in here. Yeah, if you show me an NVIDIA GPU, I'm not going to be able to tell you what that is.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know it's simpler than the brain, but I don't know. It's a lot more complicated than anything else.
I've heard this meme about like the guy who like goes back in time to impress like the middle-aged people with his like incredibly increased technology, and they're like, okay, so how does this electricity thing work? He's like, I don't know. I've got no idea. Check out this the battery set. I promise this usually, but I couldn't possibly explain why.
So there's this thing called an electron. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Computers, I think, offer like a really interesting litmus test to your philosophy of consciousness, because if you think that like the question of whether a computer can become conscious is basically the same question as whether consciousness is just reducible to material.
Is it, or could we create like if the brain is like an antenna for consciousness? Couldn't we build a computer?
Oh man, I didn't even thought about that. Yeah, that's good.
This is the thing about the hard problems. There's always
a harder problem. You know what like confuses me? And I talk
here we go. Wait, he just challenged him.
Yeah, exactly. Computers, I think, offer like a really interesting litmus test to your philosophy of consciousness, because if you think that like the question of whether a computer can become conscious is basically the same question as whether consciousness is just reducible to material.
Is it, or could we create like if the brain is like an antenna for consciousness? Couldn't we build a computer?
Oh man, I didn't even thought about that. Yeah, that's good.
This is the thing about the hard problems. There's always
a harder problem. You know like confuses me. And I've talked about this a couple of times now, and I'm being a bit silly, but I genuinely actually wouldn't know how to answer this. People say things like ChatGPT could become conscious. Okay, let me just say that it's conscious. Let's just grant it becomes conscious. What does that mean? Like you've got ChatGPT on your phone, presumably. I've got it on my phone. Does it mean that like there's an individual conscious agent in each of those? Does it mean that there's like one big thing called ChatGPT that's conscious and it's got all of these individual like avatars or express like what would that even mean? Would it be conscious only in the
Who knows? Because when you separate consciousness from metaphysical existence, then all this fucking bullshit conversation is possible, right? But again, what they're missing is it's not just the isolated consciousness by itself. Okay, consciousness is tied to a physical body that fucking feels things. Flesh, blood, ouch. It's like they talk so much about it earlier, and then they don't connect it in this part of the conversation. The thing that AI will literally never have, unless it somehow evolves it, but it's not a biological thing. So we would have to somehow program it to evolve it. Like, we'd have to start feeling things. Feeling. On a sensational level. That's it. That's it.
Moments when it's active, because that's not like sitting there, waiting around for you. It's only like doing something in the times when it's doing something.
I guess our brains are the same.
And is every instance, is every question in consciousness.
Yeah,
and not just like yours and mine, but like every new a consciousness that like blinks in and out of existence. I was talking to Nate Soares about this, and his very good point was we cross these lines when they are fuzziest. So the idea that consciousness is a binary is maybe a bit of a problem. Things don't tend to be. It certainly feels like it would be as a conscious thing. Feels like it would be this or nothing. But I think that maybe it might not be. I think that like oftentimes the thing that we think are light switches are dimmer switches, and so that like they're the line will not get crossed when one day it like stands up on a tree stump and says, "I am ChatGPT and I have suffered."
Yeah, by that point it will be far too late. Have you seen Neo, the humanoid robot?
Oh yeah, I haven't looked deep into this. I've just seen thumbnails.
It is hilarious. I literally learned about this yesterday because MKBHD made a video about it, and then there's an interview by the Wall Street Journal. So it's like a humanoid robot that's been built by some company, and it's supposed to be like this, essentially like this slave, and it's like you can pre-order it right now for $20,000. It'll ship sometime in 2026.
Yeah, you say that like it's a lot of money, but it's like. It's like a year of groceries now.
It is a lot of money when you consider that right now the robot is remote controlled.
Oh, there's like a person.
So like the idea is that basically one day,
how did I miss this?
This is incredible.
How did I miss this? Is it all like I keep seeing it all over the place, but it's just like a remote operated so they can see my house?
Yeah. So the idea is that one day this will be a fully autonomous robot.
But we need all the data.
But we need to train it, and the way that we train it is by getting rich people to spend $20,000, and then they have to schedule like a moment where somebody will remotely control the robot, literally do the dishwasher for them, which will then teach it how to do a dishwasher. Yeah. And so the Wall Street Journal went and did a sort of interview with the CEO and met this Neo, and there's literally this guy stood there with a headset on and controller, like a Wii remote or something. And she's testing it out, and she's like, okay, so go and put this in the dishwasher. And it takes him like 5 minutes going like it's like having, basically you're paying $20,000 to have like a drunk toddler like attempt to do tasks in your house. And the scariest part about this, right, is firstly, I forget the woman's name of the Wall Street Journal, but she's interviewing the CEO, and she's like, okay, so you'll need people to train this. People will need access to your house. And they're like, yeah, but like if you want the technology to be useful, you just have to accept that social contract. And then she's like, okay. And then she's like, so what's stopping me once it is autonomous, or when it's not, from just like picking up a really heavy object and dropping it on my head when I'm asleep, or boiling some water? And the CEO is just like, well, I mean, that would be physically possible, but it won't be allowed to. Yeah,
we've seen so clearly. Yeah. And I don't even I'm not even attributing malice to it, or it doesn't want to hurt you, but we've already seen that chatbots will hurt people. You know, they'll drive you freaking crazy because the incentives are very weird.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, I read this book and I don't know, it was a science fiction book and I can't remember anything about it. Except,
I would love to hear about that.
except that in order for the AI to work, you had to raise it like a child.
Yeah.
And this makes kind of sense to me.
Yes.
It had to be born, it had to be bad at walking and moving around, it had to, a person had to be a parent to this thing.
Yes.
And then it would learn how to be a person, which is how we do it.
Yeah, Joanna Stern is the woman at the Wall Street Journal, and she says at the end of this interview, she says, the next few years isn't about owning a super useful robot.
Parallels to how we raise our children.
Because we're growing AI. We're not inventing it, we are growing. You talked about this in recent video. We're growing it. It's almost like a sort of biological organism that's learning from its environment. One of the top comments quoted the CEO saying, the robot has the ability to terminate you, but it will not because of its programming, said by every scientist in every sci-fi apocalypse doomsday movie, ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's sort of it's oh yeah, it's literally the start of the movie. It's like CEO being somebody being a little, isn't this kind of dangerous? And oh, don't worry, it's not allowed to do that.
This made me think about the China computer.
Yeah.
That I don't know that you could start it up.
It doesn't have the China brain and the computer consciousness of merged into the China computer.
Okay.
So we've got this really complicated Chinese machine.
Chinese. So the China brain.
Yeah.
I think there's a thing that makes me feel like it would be more possible if it wasn't conscious from the moment it started.
Yeah.
But something happened over the course of it existing in an environment where consciousness emerged.
Yes.
And I think that might be kind of how it works with us. I have a son, and I feel like he's 9. He just turned 9. I feel like he's kind of, don't take this out of context, more conscious now than he once was. He's more introspective now than he was. He's more aware of his self. He's more, and from the beginning, I think that there were sensations. And there were I want in this direction and not another. But there weren't stories around it. He didn't have a thing to place it inside of. He didn't have memories. He didn't. So when you're a baby, you don't have this continuity. You don't have, and I don't know that you are forming memories. You're learning how to use your brain. The brain learns how to use itself. It's so weird because there's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
So that
I'm so interested in the development of brains in infants because I think it can tell us quite a lot. I've heard, I don't know anything about it, but I meant to look into it. Some discussion about the dominance of the right hemisphere in children, and then the left hemisphere sort of comes to predominate later in life, something like that. So that's why children are much more feely, and language isn't really a thing yet, and then it sort of comes. So I don't know. It's one thing that is for sure is that it is extremely complicated. Yeah, I also think, by the way, that might have something to do with free will thing, the hemisphere stuff. I talk about hemispheres all the time as well because I think it's so interesting the way that they independently interact. And I think that maybe our feeling of free will comes from our retrospective rationalization of stuff that we just did.
That is, I've heard that as an explanation for why it feels like free will is because we are always telling a story to ourselves.
Exactly.
And what story makes sense. Yeah. And, I can't cite this with any level of accuracy, but people who only have one hemisphere of the brain, or
corpus callosum,
or have the
split the brain into.
You can show them a thing, and then they can act based on what they're seeing, but they don't know that they're seeing it, and so they tell you a story about why they're acting that is different from the actual reason.
Exactly. I talk about this all the time. I sometimes talk about Alex O'Connor bingo, and if you're at home, it's consciousness, China brain, Mary's room, split brain, Gnostic Gospels, which we managed not to do. Although I did do that with Rhett the other day. Somehow it just happened. But yes, the split brain stuff is fascinating. You can watch on YouTube the experiments where they'll send just the right or the left visual field information. So the left brain does speech, and it also governs the right sort of visual field, and the right brain doesn't do speech, and it's left visual field. So if you show the left visual field, so right hand side of the eye, book, the person goes book, and you show the word camera, they go camera. And if you show them to the other side, cowboy, they'll say, I didn't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And then you give their left hand a pencil. Then you close your eyes and just let your hand, they'll draw a cowboy, which is crazy. But so the weird thing that I think you're talking about, and there's been really specific proof of this in split brain patients, this is just in people, by the way, who have the split, the corpus callosum split, in functioning brains, they just communicate with each other, of course. You can't just do this at home. I should talk about that. But with these split brain patients who've had that procedure, if you show them an instruction to just the right hand side of the brain, and they're in an experiment, they're awaiting instructions, and the instruction says, get up and walk over to that table, they'll get up, they'll walk over there. Then when the experimenter says, why did you just do that? It's not even that they say, oh, I don't know.
They're like, I wanted a glass of water.
Exactly. And they believe it. Yeah. They think it's true. And so I'm thinking, like when you were talking about free will earlier, I was thinking about the hemispheres as we always do. I was like, then when the experimenter says, why did you just do that? It's not even that they say, oh, I don't know.
They're like, I wanted a glass of water.
Exactly. And they believe it. Yeah. They think it's true. And so I'm thinking, like when you were talking about free will earlier, I was thinking about the hemispheres as we always do. I was like, okay, so if the right brain just does stuff, and then the left brain retrospectively says, oh no, I remember that the reason why I did that for was because of this and this. That's why we get this weird thing. I feel like I chose to do that because that was me when actually, no, you didn't.
I feel like if I actually believed that I didn't have free will, I would act differently. Which,
well, people say this quite often, and often as a means of objection. They say to me, you don't act like there's no free will, and I'm like, what would that look like?
Yeah.
Why would you act differently?
I don't know,
because people say.
I just still care about the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. The argument against free will is that you are just governed by the desires that you don't control.
Yeah.
So when you eat, it's because you're hungry and you don't control being hungry and then whatnot. And so somebody says, well, what if you just knew that was free will? It's like, I'm still hungry. Yeah. I'm still going to go and eat. I'm just going to know that that's why I'm doing it. It's exactly the same thing as something like hunger. You feel hunger. And I could say, oh, but Hank, don't you know that the reason you feel hunger is because of this evolutionary explanation, blah, 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 blah. And you'll go, oh, that's really interesting. But I'm still hungry. It doesn't remove the hunger just to explain why it's happening.
It's almost like something emerges from a world of a bunch of people who don't have free will. And I'm not saying that society has free will, but there is a thing that emerges. I was just thinking about how, ever since you said elephant, there's this little thing in my head that it's been saying, and the way that you put an elephant in my head, I allow the TikTok algorithm to put whatever the hell it wants in my head.
Yeah. And you have to eat because eating is a very immediate need. It's a sensational need, right? But the things that are dangerous to say free will is an illusion for are morality, right? This is the point that this is what Hank was talking about when he said, I would act a lot differently if I didn't believe in free will. Right? Basically, you would just kind of float through life. You would just let me just kind of eat when I need to, make sure I get enough food and clean water, and I maybe take a shower or something when I stink. But I don't know, I'll just do whatever. I'm determined. Who cares? Right? But then somebody who would act like that, well, they were determined to act that way. Like, I don't know, man.
Its incentive is to give me whatever will keep me on the app for longest. That's the whole game. And maybe with a side of showing me ads, but they got to turn it into money. And that puts stuff in my head, and it changes who I am. So what I do have is attention. Do I have control over my attention? I don't know. But I know that if I say the only thing that I have is attention, and if I give that away to like 5 billionaires, and I'm like, that's the right choice to make, then I'll be less likely to do that in the future. And also everybody who heard that will be a little less likely to do that in the future. So there's this thing that's going on. It's there's all these big brain tech guy ideas that Twitter is the super consciousness. But there is a super consciousness, and it is a thing that travels between us, and it does change behavior.
It's the Silicon Valley brain.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's the whole world, and we're all doing it together, and the Midwest is included for once.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah, I think a lot about this kind of stuff, and I think about brains and what they do, and consciousness, and this kind of stuff, and it's this algorithmic thing. You're right. I like what you say about attention. I was just thinking about that and how to put it to work. Somebody right now is scrolling the comments, right?
Yeah.
You do it on your video. You go, I'm just going to scroll through the comments. And somebody who was just doing that, as I said those words, was scrolling and reading something, and I said, someone's scrolling the comments right now. They've gone, whoa.
Yeah.
And their attention has just been pulled back up. It's the cocktail party effect, which you talk about in that video 10 years ago, which is, if you're a cocktail party and there's loads of noise around, and I'm listening to what you're saying, there's murmur.
No awareness of any of this stuff happening back there.
Couldn't say what that conversation is. You can't even hear it. It's like a big murmur. But if someone over there, says your name or says your hometown or something, you're just boom, you're over there all of a sudden. And it's not clear exactly why that's even possible, but I think that makes me suspicious as to whether we have full control over our attention.
I don't think that we have full control over our attention. I think that no one living on the earth today who's paying attention to their consciousness at all is I've got total control over my choices. I just closed the Reddit tab and opened the Reddit tab again. I closed it and I typed in RED. So I'm totally in control here right now.
Yeah.
So and I've closed TikTok and opened TikTok.
Yeah, I've done that.
It's a mess. So yeah, the thing that I am most worried about, maybe I got a lot of worries, but I am very worried about this in terms of how our minds interact with their world around them. I'm worried about the extent to which we have these algorithms optimized for making money. And just like when you have a food company optimized for making money, you don't end up with the healthiest food. I think when you have an information company optimized for making money, you don't have the healthiest information. And that can be in a lot of different ways. But I think the biggest way that seems so obvious to me is
the big thing is engaging your consciousness, right? When you really truly engage it, it's boring as fuck. It feels awful because it's like coming out of a drug. When you choose to stop scrolling, right? My commentary becomes so much more valuable when I pause and I take the time to think about what I want to say. I could just passively watch this video and have no opinion on it. That's like what it is to just scroll through your phone. But when you actually take, it doesn't matter what the content of it. I'm not even talking about the content of it. Just focus your attention. Say, what's my take on this? What's my opinion? Right? You're engaging your mind. Right? To the extent that you have a choice in there, that's what our free will is.
Is that it encourages a lack of faith and trust in everything. Because a very easy way to get people's attention is to say this thing that you think you should trust is bad, actually. I think about RFK Jr. as a science communicator because I'm a science communicator.
Yeah.
And he's communicating about science.
Okay.
About the body of human knowledge. And he talks about, and I think about why he is successful at getting information to people's heads, because that's part of my job, to share things that are interesting and hopefully also useful. And I'm sure that he sees himself in the same way.
Yeah.
And when I really sort of dove deep into how his career has gone and how he talks about stuff, there's a trick that he will always have that I will never have, which is that he can say whatever. And if you want to get attention from people, what should you say? The government is poisoning your children. And I can't say that because I don't think the government is poisoning your children.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a huge amount of evidence to indicate the government is not poisoning your children. But if you'd like someone to look at you, the government is poisoning your children is a pretty good place to start. And then you can build the story from there. But it is the scariest possible thing. So you show them the scariest possible thing. And I look through my social media feeds and I see versions of that are more appealing to me. That there'll be some graph that's shows how bad everything is and how we're headed towards certain doom. And I can't look away from that graph because that's a real thing. It's really happening. And sometimes I look deeper and it actually isn't.
Yeah.
Actually, that graph was misleading in a number of ways.
Yeah.
Or I saw one once that straight up just was wrong. It was just somebody put the numbers in wrong, but that's the one that went viral because it's the one that showed the scariest version of the story.
Yeah.
And I think that if the world is composed of a bunch of people who have no accountability for their lies or their mistakes, even, let's say that, they don't have to be intentionally misleading you, but people make mistakes all the time, or they want to get views, and so they find that when they're more angry, the videos do better. If you have a world that's composed of all of this, then you have a world that is more frayed at the edges, one that maybe people are more aware of problems than they used to be, and so that can be a positive, but one that is where if you are exposed to all of this, it's just impossible to feel any agency, and it is, and all you feel kind of is that at the root of it, there is this insurmountable evil. And I worry about this because that content does so well.
But that's why I think people like content like yours, because in part what you do is you notice this and you try to sort of speak against it. And I was just thinking there's a really interesting phenomenon that's maybe going on here, which is that you kind of have people's attention. You take this thing that's happening in the world that people trust and you say, hey, don't actually trust that thing. And what you sometimes do in video is you'll say, there's this thing in the world that everybody trusts, which is the videos of people saying not to trust stuff.
Yeah.
And you're saying, hey, don't trust that stuff.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, so people are still so you still manage to capture people's attention with a similar sort of hey, this thing that you think is wrong, but only because you've been sort of faced with
things I really liked recently about AA batteries.
Okay.
So yeah, it did fine. The idea was I went in thinking there must be a reason why AA batteries still suck.
Yeah.
So like they're the same as they were when I was a kid. I'm 45 years old.
Yeah.
They're maybe a little bit better than they were back then, but they're basically the same. And why? Like I've got an electric car. It can go for 300 miles. Why would a AA battery still suck this bad? Why are we still using this old shitty chemistry?
Yeah.
And I thought the answer would be that like some form of evil. Like somebody's got a cartel somewhere and they're like not letting batteries get better because that would be bad for the bottom line. They want to keep us buying batteries. And I looked into it and like ultimately it's like kind of fine. Like it's ultimately because lithium-ion batteries produce a different voltage than alkaline batteries. And so in order to get a lithium-ion battery that works in a normal device that currently takes AA batteries, you have to put a voltage stepper in it. And that makes it more expensive. It takes up space inside the battery, so you don't get as much gain as you think. And so like we're making these voltage steppers smaller and cheaper. And so maybe eventually we'll get there. But in the meantime, we haven't because it's hard. And it's more expensive. And also the devices that use AA batteries tend to not need that much electricity anyway.
Yeah.
And if we need a device that does need more electricity, we just put a rechargeable lithium ion in it from the start.
Yeah.
So
turns out there's a practical reason why, right? Again, everybody wants to jump to the right, the sexy conspiracy conclusion. There's a cartel, evil cartel, like keeping the batteries sucky. It's like that's just kind of just because like it's kind of just easier. Now you could blame capitalism still here, right? Because you could say, well, it's because it's cheaper, right? But the higher quality battery is better because it would do this and that. But they're only doing it because it's cheaper. It's like, well, it's cheaper. But do you want the company to have to pay more? And then you potentially don't get a batteries at all? Like, it's trade-offs, yeah. There's no evil happening. It's just people kind of fumbling their way, trying to make the right decision based on the data.
So like we solve the problem a different way. And like the toys, like really the problem is that like people are building toys still that use alkaline batteries because it's cheaper to do that. So like the toy people are to some extent to blame.
It's the toy people, it's not the cartel.
But like they're also following incentives that kind of make sense, and most toys don't get used for that long anyway, so they probably don't need that much.
If only we could, maybe we just need to bring more awareness to the lack of development of AA technology, which I've never thought about. I think one of your greatest talents is not even just in like really helpfully explaining to people why certain things are the case, but thinking of the kind of stuff that kind of actually does need explaining, but thought like I've never once questioned why AA batteries suck. And I don't know how an idea like that hasn't struck me. It's kind of annoying that it hasn't. I mean, we were just talking before about all these video ideas. Like I mentioned Rhett and Link, they did their eating every food that's mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
So every kind of food is mentioned, any kind of Bible.
We're YouTubers, and I'm like, so are you. You got your own ideas.
We have them in.
You got a ton of ideas. You have different ideas.
Yeah. But I bring somebody on who does think of such things and interview them in the Zoom.
I don't know that I need to see you eat every food in the Bible though.
That's fair enough, actually.
Yeah. That's a more of a Rhett and Link idea.
Yeah. You might be right. Maybe the universe just.
I love ideas and how they work. Because like, what's that?
It just sort of occurs to you, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think about it a lot because I have a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
And so when I'm having an idea, I now do the thing that I do with like anxiety. You know, when I'm having an anxiety, I'm like, what's happening? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Whereas you don't tend to do a lot of ideas because you don't want to like interrupt the process. It's not pleasant, and so you're not like searching for a reason why this is happening to you.
Yeah.
Because
it
happens to me. I have done it. And what I really think it comes down to is like a good understanding of a problem set and a good understanding of a tool set. So like what Rhett and Link are thinking is like, we need to make something that's going to make people click. It's going to be fun to watch. We're going to have a good time doing it. We've got all the tools necessary to pull this off. So like they understand their problem set, which is like, how do you get people to watch something that they're going to enjoy? And then they understand their tool set, which is like, we're Rhett and Link, and like we have mythical entertainment around us. And and so like that, and like the audience that they have, like what is their audience like? What does their audience expect?
Yeah.
You know, you're working with your own tool set and problem set.
Yeah, I suppose so. And they do it very differently as well. I was just there. I was just at Mythical HQ again, and it is quite the operation.
It's quite the operation.
People on computers. I'm saying, what could that person possibly be doing? I don't understand. Like, well, how are they?
They're ordering every food in the Bible.
Yeah, that probably was what he was doing that day. Yeah. I'm just wondering, since you mentioned ideas and come up with ideas all the time, there must be sometimes when you have ideas which you have to abandon either because you actually just can't work it out or no one's worked it out. Where like you or maybe that becomes the video where you're like, why are AA batteries so bad? And you look it up and you're like, oh, no one knows. And so you make a video being like, hey guys, like let's improve our AA batteries. That kind of thing must happen a fair amount of the time. Yeah, I mean that's the great thing about this particular job. So if the question presents itself, which it doesn't always, and I couldn't tell you where the AA battery thing came from. But if the question presents itself, the answer is always interesting. Yeah. Or it could be. I pretty much can always make the answer interesting. And there's a lot of different ways that I have learned to do that, and it sort of like comes down to the question. Yeah, philosophers do the opposite. They've got really interesting questions and really drawn out, boring answers. Like, I don't know. Or they just sit around thinking about China.
They're hard questions.
They are, and a lot of the time they are just literally meaningless or completely impractical. But I defend the sort of doing philosophy for philosophy's sake.
Me too.
I think it's interesting. Yeah. It's like a mental exercise. Sometimes it's just like go to the gym or something.
There's stuff in there.
Yeah. But you did the philosophy crash course as well, right? The philosophy one. Yeah. That must have been quite hard to get right.
I'll tell you what, it was 100% other people's words. Yeah. Right. So that was a teleprompter reading, just like psychology was. And I was the cheapest available host. But I learned a lot.
I can imagine like you're sort of reading from a teleprompter being like, right.
Like SciShow, that happens all the time. Every time I go into shoot SciShow, it's a failure if I walk out without having learned something.
Yeah. You've got to be like a newsreader who's sort of like reading these stories and managing not to constantly be sort of, did you do that? Yeah. I think it's quite the talent.
Yeah, I mean, the worst videos are always the ones that I care about the most. Like AA batteries, if I can just crank that out.
Yeah, kind of stuck in YouTube.
The moment I feel like something's important and I want to like do it really well, it's a catastrophe.
Do you mean in terms of trying to get the video done, or the actual quality of the video results?
The quality of the video that results is much higher, but it's going to be 6 months before it's done, minimum.
I'm the same. There are video ideas I've been wanting to make for literally years.
Yeah, I've got footage in the cam.
Actual dream blunt rotation.
Just like, but that's almost worse because I'm like, I don't know what that is.
I've got this video that I wanted to make a couple years ago. I still plan on making it.
I'll just casually
cool if I interviewed a couple of experts. So I interviewed, got an hour footage. They're thinking, what happened to that footage? I emailed them recently and I was like, hey, I just wanted to randomly say, I still plan on making this. I'm really sorry. And they're totally cool with it. But now I'm also like, I've got 2 hours of interview on a subject that I haven't touched in a few years. I'm now going to have to watch through the whole. It's just like you're just like making more and more work for yourself, which is why I quite like the fact that a lot of the time with like podcasts and conversations I have, it's really difficult to predict what will do well.
Oh yeah,
it's so difficult to predict that there's much less of that kind of like, oh gosh, like this one, got to be ready for this. Make sure it's like let's just have a chat and like see how it goes. Yeah, I've been amazed at some of the good and the bad. Actually, Rhett's episode, the first episode with Rhett is the second most popular episode we've ever done, just under a journalist from the UK called Peter Hitchens, who stormed out.
Yeah. I thought about storming out a couple times just to try it out.
See how you've never walked out of an
interview. Put an elephant in my head.
I know. It's like it's pretty.
Yeah, I did watch that. It's hard not to want to watch things like that.
That's the thing. That's it. I really didn't know whether to upload it because he
acted very strange.
So yeah,
if he afterward.
Especially, yeah, that's it. If he just walked out, then first I probably wouldn't have uploaded it. Just at his request, if he said like, if he just walked out as he was walking out, said like, by the way, I'd rather you didn't run this. And like, if you said to me, Alex, like, I feel like I've looked it back and like my hair wasn't quite right, then it's like, cool. Well, like I like to make sure that guests are comfortable to know that we're not going to post anything they don't want. But it was such an extraordinary moment that I had to make this decision.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It was.
What's it like? Because I know that you were into New Atheism as a youth.
Yeah.
What's it like getting to like hang out with all these guys?
Yeah, it's like it's a privilege and an honor. But as I'm sure has happened to you many times, given that you are internet famous and you've done all these kinds of interesting things, you find yourself in situations where like either because when an email comes through and you get an opportunity, you're like, wow, this is really exciting and very excited. And then as time goes on, you're getting ready for it and you're expecting it. So when it actually happens, it's almost like normal. You're so used to the idea that this is happening, then it happens and you're like, cool. And
it's not like you run into a coffee shop and then you like sit down and have a really engaging conversation out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I get more starstruck when it comes to like random, like micro celebrities who I've heard that I never expected to bump into on the street or something. Right? But it's really interesting because I feel as though I am like picking up this conversation where it was dropped off because New Atheism was a thing. It's become fashionable to say that it's kind of dead, but there's still a lot of atheists and there's still a lot of people who are interested in religion.
Yeah.
And there's not really it's not a movement, there's not a discussion. So when it comes to sort of agnostic, atheist, content, particularly online, there's lots of people doing it. But there doesn't seem to be sort of this unified movement. And when it comes to like writing books or stuff like that, there's no one really doing that. So I kind of feel like, okay, I'm in this position where I can pick up the spat on, but I'm not trying to be the protege of someone like Richard Dawkins. I love Richard, and I've spent a lot of time with him, and I respect him a lot. But I tell the story sometimes of when I saw him in the car park, and he asked me, I said to him that the God delusion I felt didn't adequately explain or deal with a particular argument. And he said to me later, he said to me at this event, he said, hey, what could I have done? And I said, well, you treat all kinds of causation as if they're the same thing. And he says, well, do you think there are different kinds of causation? I said, oh, yeah, I do. And I sort of spent about 30 to 60 seconds trying to explain what the difference was, to which he said, but what the fuck has that got to do with anything interesting? Thank God I'm not a theologian. And then he walked away. Well, he wasn't being rude. That's just rude. And I really felt as though, like being left.
He said, he dismissed it because he's like, that's just theology, philosophy. Yeah, Dawkins is like that. He just kind of dismisses things like that. He's like, I don't know, I'm a scientist, I don't care. Yeah.
I do.
Dawkins is a bad example, yeah.
And then I sort of spent about 30 to 60 seconds trying to explain what I thought the difference was, to which he said, but what the fuck has that got to do with anything interesting? Thank God I'm not a theologian. And then he walked away. And by the way, he wasn't being rude. That's just who he was. And I really felt as though, like, being left stood there in this car park with my hand, like, okay.
By the way, Richard Dawkins is absolutely based. I'm happy that he mogged Alex here. Absolutely. This is how you respond to somebody who believes there's different types of causation. Really? What the fuck does that mean? Like, how? Why? Yeah, explain that. Explain yourself. Explain yourself. You need to explain yourself. Do not make a fool of yourself in front of the great Richard Dawkins. Without having like I'd love to hear what he said. 30 to 60 seconds to explain it? Then do it now. I don't even get how any of this is helpful to think of the world this way. What? Things move from one place or state to another. The event that preceded the other event and made physical contact and created sensations and sparks and like that's the cause. This is so stupid. It's really dumb. It's dumb. I hate it. Is this almost over?
I felt that was quite representative of what I feel like I'm doing, which is literally the archetypal new atheist has done his career, has done these really interesting things and wonderful things, and has got to this point where now, at this point in the conversation, where I'm like, well, there's this really interesting stuff about God and religion, and he's like, I'm not interested in that, and literally walks away, leaving me to sit there like, okay, sure, the metaphor in the car park. It's me then, and I sort of feel like that is what my career is. It's Richard Dawkins saying, I'm not interested in that, and walking away, and me saying, well, I am.
I'm still here.
So let's keep it going. That's so it's been really interesting in that way to feel as though I'm talking to people who I've got to credit for in part of my existence in the world.
Are there different? Are there different types of causation? Just want to see what the, necessary, sufficient, and contributory causes. Well, legal systems often use cause in fact, actual cause, and proximate cause to link actions to harm. Levels of causation. The cause always present when the effect is present. Absolute causality. Cause only leads the effect under specific conditions. Conditional causality. Contributory causality. Cause increases the likelihood of the effect. I mean, I know about necessary and sufficient, but that's stupid too, because it's like what Leonard Peikoff says, even though I hate that guy. But when something's sufficient, in some sense, there really is no such thing as a necessary cause, right? Everything's, well, or in some sense, everything is necessary, right? It's necessarily what it does. It is the thing that it is, and it will act in the way that it acts. And so then it necessarily does that thing. And then if it affects something else, because that's in its nature to do, then it will do so. So yeah, sure. But so everything is as necessary to some extent, and also nothing is then, right? Like if everything's necessary, then nothing is.
As I am on the internet, but at the same time feeling like I'm there at the end of their intellectual career and I'm at the beginning of mine. And it's not like I'm going to repeat what they did, but rather, so it's a weird feeling.
It's a different world too.
Yeah, so I guess it's similar to how people feel like with parents, where like you love your parents, but you sort of feel like you're about to inherit a different world to them, and there's sort of this crossover point where I respect you and love you, but we're about to live a new life.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a very similar experience to this when I was in college, and I read this book. It was very meaningful for me by Daniel Quinn called Ishmael, and I just sort of like, in like perfect moment kind of thing where it's like, okay, I can see the world as an adult now and like be much more critical of it and much more thoughtful about it. And he had written a bunch of later work, and I sent him an email and I was like, you in your work you talk about how humans are just another animal, and there's nothing really special about us but XYZ. Here's why I think that there's something that's exceptional about humans. And he basically wrote back and he was like, what you've identified here is that we disagree. And I think that like humans are very smart and cheetahs are very fast and blue whales are very big, and that's just all just like different qualities of animals. And my instinct was to like write back and be like, no, like I'm not saying that we don't like many animals have many superlatives, but there's a different thing that we're doing here. But he very sort of intentionally, I think like any 60-year-old man emailing a college student was like being very gracious to email at all and was saying it's okay for us to disagree. Yeah. And I took that with such like I felt so good about that. Like I see a thing differently from you, and like we're all going to see things differently from each other. Yeah, I think that's an important part of it's where like if you're trying to be anything more than just an interested reader of someone's work. Yeah. If you want to like do something, if you want to like put out content, if you want to write a book, if you want to be a scientist, you're not going to do that unless you meet some point of departure. Right. Because otherwise, what are you there for? Right. And it was almost like I was so young that I didn't think it was possible to disagree with someone who I agreed with on so much. Yeah. That's the most interesting kind of disagreement. So I imagine, the feeling you had there is a similar one. But I am constantly I feel so lucky, and it's like it's usually after the fact. And also, I mean, even like there's new atheist stuff, but there's also like I grew up during the heyday of YouTube, and so like I've spoken to some really interesting people. I've had Rhett on the show, Vsauce on the show, I didn't know that. And like it'll be out by the time this episode's out. But yeah, I was like, it was like the coolest thing ever, and I still love Vsauce. And like he comes in and we do the episode, and it's really cool, we have a great time, and then suddenly when he sort of leaves, and I'm sort of getting a taxi home, or whatever, and I'm sort of like, what, like man, like that was Vsauce. And green, and it's like I was walking to a bar in this town in Missoula, Montana. I walked into a bar, my favorite bar I always used to go to back when I went to bars. Yeah. And a guy pointed at me with two fingers, and he said Vsauce. Hey, so I thought now here. Every time I think about Michael, I think about that. Yeah, yeah, but it's cool that somebody sort of they were right. Something was going right there. It's not like they were like Tom Hanks. Something's correct. And I've had that sometimes. There's some actors who I look a little bit like that. I sometimes get confused for. Right, because they're like I know that face, and they're like, and now because I thought for a time maybe I just like really look like these people, so people confuse them. But I don't think it's that. I think it's like I know you from I've seen you on screen. Yeah, exactly. It's something like that. But yeah, I feel incredibly lucky, and I try to kind of write down things that happen. I'm really glad. I started in 2017. I had this journal, which I type, sort of try to keep a kind of diary of sorts. But I got this handwritten journal, which 2017 opens like, okay, I'm going to start this thing. I'm 17 years old, and I've got this YouTube channel called Cosmic Skeptic, and it's got like 70,000 subscribers. I think. You started when you were 27? I started when I was 17. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, which is 10. That's wild. Whenever that was 10 years, about a decade ago. Yeah, so I was 16, 17. I was like, I was making videos when I was a teenager. Yeah, when did you start? When I was 27. Yeah, right. Okay, so exactly 10 years old. Is that when you started, or when things kind of? No, that was the first video. 27 years old. We were like the grown-ups in the room. Yeah. In 2007. Yeah, right. Gotcha. Yeah, well, I mean, I would have started a few years earlier than that, but 2017 is fine. That's why I wrote it down. I'm like, wow, I've got 70,000 subscribers. This is crazy, and I'm writing about all this cool stuff that's happening. It's sort of like, oh, like this person like followed me on Twitter and stuff like that. And I'm reading it back, and I'm like, that is so.
Yeah, they were already kind of
now,
old fogey guys when they started.
It's not something I think to write home about.
Yeah, right. There's all these little moments.
Yeah, and like I can tell when sometimes I'm writing and hope that I'll read it back. Where I'll be like, oh, I hope that one day I get to do this, hoping that one day I'll read it back. And yeah, it's like I don't journal at all. It's well so good. It's well worth it. You said I remember in a recent video someone asked you about advice relating to cancer, and you told them to.
They did journal during cancer.
Journal. So you did journal a little bit, but was that more like
It was both. It was functional because like chemo has symptoms, and you want to know what your sort of typical process is. And, so there's a super useful functional element to it. But I also journaled like a journal. And some days I wouldn't. Some days I'd be like, of course, feel like here's my 3 symptoms for the day. Yeah. But then I go back and read that. There's a bunch of good stuff in there.
But even that's what I was going to say. That even now it's not been like that long. Yeah. And you probably will flip through it when you think to it and be like, oh, God, I forgot I was thinking that. Yeah. That is something you can do. And people are always like, oh, you should journal because like it's good for your mental health, or it's kind of message. Like none of that is the reason. I just think it's really, really interesting
to have a dialogue with yourself.
Yeah. And also, how like sometimes people find history really weird in that like what is it, like MLK and Frank were like born on the same day, like that kind of stuff. I was like, no way, there's that crossover. That happens in your own life. Because I'm like reading back and I'm like, oh, like I met this person today, like now a friend of mine or something. And then underneath I'm like, oh, also, I hit this many subscribers, or I just traveled to. Like, no, oh, whoa, yeah. So I only had that when that happened.
This is why I say the self doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like the story I'm telling is not the one that I experienced.
Yeah. Well, Hank Green, whoever you are. I ended my podcast with Rhett saying the same thing. That's only because I hit this many subscribers really weird in that like, what is it, like MLK and Frank were like born on the same day, like that kind of stuff. I was like, no way, there's that crossover. That happens in your own life. Because I'm like reading back and I'm like, oh, like I met this person today, like now a friend of mine or something. And then underneath I'm like, oh, also, I hit this many subscribers, or I just traveled to. Like, no, oh, whoa, yeah. So I only had that when that happened.
This is why I say the self doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like the story I'm telling is not the one that I experienced.
Yeah.
I mean, he's being cutesy there, but yeah, it is you. It's you remembering this thing that happened to you, or part of you that you just forgot about. Because we're fallible. That's part of our nature. It's part of the self, is that you don't remember everything perfectly. Right? It's not that it doesn't exist or it's illusory. You're just incorrect. You forgot something. It's like, what? Why are we demanding perfection where none is possible? By the very nature of the thing.
Yeah. Well, Hank Green, whoever you are. I ended my podcast with Rhett saying the same thing. That's only because we had some trifles trying to pronounce his second name. That's the reason I said whoever you are. Because apparently McLaughlin is the American way, with like an F. McLaughlin, whereas I would say McLaughlin. And I got some gripe in the comments. Although I am a big fan of getting trivial things wrong incorrectly. I don't do this.
Just for the engagement.
I don't do this.
Not on purpose.
But the best version of this I ever saw was Adam Neely, who is a musician. He's like a music YouTuber.
Yeah.
You know him?
Yeah, like Adam Neely, like Washington?
As in he lives in Washington?
No, as in he wrote the song Washington.
Oh, maybe.
Brad Neely.
Maybe not. No, he's like a sort of he does like music theory and answers questions.
Okay, yeah.
And he did this episode on Perfect Pitch. And he's sort of walking like down a street and this car horn goes off and he's like, so I have perfect, and he's so like, for example, I know that was like an E flat or something. And I can't remember exactly, but as far as I remember, like it wasn't an E flat, and everyone was like, "Oh, it wasn't." And everybody's in the comments like, "That was not an E flat." And I'm sure that at some point he then said,
"Claim it."
I knew that was not an E flat, but I said it was because I knew that everyone would comment about it. Now I can't remember if that's exactly how it happened, or maybe that was just a really great cover story.
Yeah,
but it's just genius. So, John Green, thank you, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, oh my God,
it's been great fun.
This was fun. It was scary because I had no idea what we were going to talk about, but instead we just talked about everything.
That's right. That's the way it should be, I think. If you enjoyed that conversation, you might like my previous episode with Michael Stevens from Vsauce. You can watch it by clicking the link that's on your screen. To support my work and get early ad-free access to episodes, subscribe to my Substack at alexoconnor.com. Thanks for watching.
Damn it. I was trying to catch it.
So, subscribe to my Substack. Well, let me try this British.
Okay, I don't know. I think I only want to just go through this first 10 minutes at 2x speed, just to get his thoughts on, does anything really exist? Because that's pretty major for me. Then I'm out of here. Go to bed. I'm only gonna watch to there. I do not want to watch the rest of this. Can't take much more of this.
Diet Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. It's probably their newer formulation because there's also a Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Wow. Another wonderful British export. I gotta say, this is different than Diet Dr. Pepper in the United States. Do you think? I think that it's a more modern formula. It's more syrupy. That was what they couldn't quite crack in the 80s. How do you make a sugar-free drink taste like it's got that sugar thickness? And how's that do? That's got it. Yeah. Are you sure it's not to do with the glass? Because you know how drinks taste different depending on what they're coming out of? Yeah. Do you know why that is? I think it's probably a lot of things. Not just the container, but how much carbonation they can put in, how much of the syrup they can put in based on different technologies, whether it's a can or a bottle. A fountain drink is very different. It can be a lot more fizzy, but you can also crank the syrup up more than the manufacturer recommends. But the recommended amount is what's in the canned and bottled versions. Oh, really? I wonder how far away you have to get from that for it to no longer count as Dr. Pepper anymore. I do wonder. Legally, what you can do as a vendor, because you bought the bag, you bought the syrup. How much you mix in with the carbonated water should be up to you. It's up to the consumer as well. Because you've seen on a fountain, the beverages come out, and you've got like a dark band and a light band. Yeah, and that light, that's both of them mixing. They mix more in the cup, but if you push your cup on that machine and then scoot to the side, so the lighter beam just falls and gets drained away, you're mainly getting syrup. You get like super heavy soft drinks. But you're putting a label on it. You're saying this is Dr. Pepper. Yes. So if you on the back end crank up that syrup level above where Dr. Pepper would like it to be,
could you get in trouble?
But who would you get in trouble with? Would you get in trouble with the consumer who's expecting Dr. Pepper, or with Dr. Pepper who sold you a product that you have to sell in a particular way? You know?
Well, I mean, depends how you define trouble.
Yeah.
Like the consumer might say, "Oh, this is too thick,"
Yeah.
but you could actually be.
Well, there's varying. Yeah, I mean, there's probably some kind of disclaimer, like when you get it from the fountain, it's different. I don't know. That's a good. I guess it is a good question.
Liable monetarily to the Dr. Pepper bottling company.
Yeah, because if you're just like selling the wrong thing, I mean, if it's not Dr. Pepper and it's being sold as Dr. Pepper, then presumably you can sue for your money back. But what counts?
Right, yeah, a customer could say, "I want my money back. Yeah, this machine isn't working."
Yeah, but then I wonder if, somebody who drunk a bunch of bottled Dr. Pepper could just have normal draft Dr. Pepper and go, this doesn't taste the same. I want my money back too.
Yeah, this is neurology. This
Exactly.
is Dr. Pepper. Its recipe has changed a bunch over its history.
Yep.
We're at the point where I fell down this rabbit hole for.
But then I wonder if, somebody who drunk a bunch of bottled Dr. Pepper could just have normal draft Dr. Pepper and go, this doesn't taste the same. I want my money back too.
Yeah, this is neurology. This
Exactly.
is Dr. Pepper. Its recipe has changed a bunch over its history.
Yep.
We're at the point where I fell down this rabbit hole for a while of trying to figure out how to make Coca-Cola flavor.
Right.
What is that secret recipe? Is it nutmeg and vanilla and toasted orange, or what is it? And I realized it's none of those. It is a concoction of laboratory byproduct chemicals with names like oxyphenylene, 7, and it happens to have like a cherry note when consumed by a human. But it's not cherries. It's not even based on cherries. It's just something that was found, and that's their secret. You can use equipment to analyze what the chemical components of something are.
Yeah.
And if you put in Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper, you don't get like the computer doesn't spit out, "Oh, it's got fresh cherries in it." Even a cherry won't register as containing cherry, because cherry is a word we give to a incredibly complex suite of chemicals.
Yeah, and I suppose ultimately those chemicals are themselves made up of smaller things, such that if you had a truly accurate ingredient list for Coca-Cola, it would just sort of say quarks, electrons, mass.
That's
charge.
right. Yeah, I saw a meme once that was like, okay, here's what's in apple fruit snacks. And the ingredient list has a million things with hard to pronounce names, but here's what's in an apple. Ingredients, apple.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the retort was, okay, actually, here's what's in an apple.
Yeah.
It's like iron 3, and there's all these chemicals that make up the very complex organic structure that is an apple. And then there was a third revision of the meme where someone just had fruit snacks and an apple, and then underneath it, they just had all the subatomic particles in the standard model. And that's it. They're the same.
Who was it that said if you want to make a sandwich, you start with the universe? Is that Carl Sagan?
Yeah, Carl Sagan. Like, if you want to bake an apple pie from scratch, first you must invent the universe.
Yeah, somebody tried to do this once. I forget who it was, but as like a project, they tried to make a sandwich from scratch, by which they mean like, growing the bread, like rearing a pig to get the bacon for the and doing everything necessary. And I want to say it cost like $15,000 and took about 2 years or something, right?
Yeah.
And so I suppose the question that's being driven at here, and it's a good way in actually, is kind of when does something count as a part of something else? Like how far do we have to dig down into something's parts before we're satisfied to say we know what makes it up? Like if you've got a table, I can say what's the table made out of? It's made out of a surface and its legs. And
that's because Parmenides was right. That's because Parmenides is right. That's because Parmenides is right. Ultimately, everything that we think is a part of something, well, it is. It's part of a whole. We and everything else around us are parts of a whole. We and everything else around us are parts of a continuous whole. There you go. Done.
And you could then say, but what are the legs made out of? They're made out of wood. What's wood made out of? And you can kind of keep on going. But it seems like a bit of an illegitimate approach. If I was to ask you what this table's made out of, and you told me it's made out of electrons,
Well, yeah, I would just say there's no table there. There's a bunch of stuff, and it's tabling right now.
Yeah.
And it can table in a lot of different ways. I can remove one of its legs, and it's still tabling pretty well.
Yeah.
There's some things it's doing that are atypical for a table, like missing one of its legs. But once you start asking about what the table as a noun is made out of, you're overcounting the universe. You're saying, well, there's all this stuff, and then there's also what they make up. So there's all that stuff plus one extra thing. They're combined nounhood.
Yeah.
And I say we can just reject that when we're being technical. Obviously, I don't walk around going, "Oh man, I'm tired." And my friend's like, "Oh, sit down in that chair." And I'm like, "What's that?" There are no chairs. But the only way to avoid a lot of these clever little funny paradoxes, like the ship of Theseus, the Swordies paradox, you have to admit that, look, it's a fiction. We've cut the world up and we've added names of our own invention.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the solution is staring us in the face here. Like you take something like the ship of Theseus. I read recently, I don't know if this is true, but I read online that apparently the Wikipedia page for the ship of Theseus has had some, 2,000-3,000 edits over its history, and that there's no single sentence on the Wikipedia page for the ship of Theseus that was in the original Wikipedia entry for the ship of Theseus, which I thought was quite a nice touch.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, and it's a great way to show what's really going on. Because if you said, well, the ship of Theseus article today isn't the same as the one in 2007, I'd be like, of course it's not. We know it's not. It has a different name.
Yeah.
Because the page has an actual revision name with a timestamp and everything.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a boat, it feels more like, well, boats can't just change. So you see that the identity of something really depends on the context.
Yeah.
From a really far away perspective, it's the same. It's the Wikipedia page for the ship of Theseus.
Yeah.
But you zoom in closer and you go, well, is that the same boat? Well, it's the boat that has been continuously registered to Michael Stevens. But if you're asking me where's the original material the boat was made out of, that could be somewhere else.
Yeah, and it seems like the only non-arbitrary way to answer a question like, well, which is the ship of Theseus? Is it the original planks that you've reconstructed, or is it the one you end up with all of the revisions? The only non-arbitrary answer to that is that there is no such thing as the ship of Theseus.
Yeah.
There's just matter that gets arranged in a particular way, and we put labels on it. In other words, it's whichever one you want
Yeah,
it
so
to be.
it's much more legitimate to ask, where is the stuff currently being labeled the ship of Theseus?
Yes.
Or where is the stuff that once was?
Yeah, exactly.
And the ship of Theseusing.
And that's when you have to get a bit technical and say, well, what do you mean when you say which is the ship of Theseus? Because if you mean the matter that made up the ship of Theseus, well, those will be subatomic particles that are probably all over the universe by now. They're sort of spread out all over the place. But I don't think that's functionally what you're interested in right now because you want to go to sea.
Yeah.
So if you're asking, if the captain comes in and says, where's the ship of Theseus? You'd say, it's over there, sir. Here's your steering wheel, or whatever they call them on boats. Whereas if, Zeno walked in and said, where's the ship of Theseus? You'd say, it's nowhere and everywhere.
It's a pseudo question.
Depends on the context, right? And it's the same thing asking, what is a table? I mean, you made a video called What is a Chair? Or do chairs exist, right?
Yeah.
And It's one of those sort of classic Vsauce titles, right? The sort of like, who even knows what that question could even be getting at?
Why would you even ask?
But this is the kind of thing you're getting at, right? And this is, you used the word already, mereology, the study of parts and how parts relate to wholes. Are you then a mereological nihilist in thinking that there are no real material objects, there's just stuff that we arrange?
If that's what that means, then yes. I don't remember all the isms and ists that exist in ontology, but I believe that there is stuff. But I don't believe that there are any nouns besides the vague noun stuff.
Interesting. So stuff for you is like, whatever's actually there. There's just stuff like matter, particles, that kind of stuff. And when you put that together in an arrangement, like into this chair or into this table, that there's not actually some new thing.
The problem is that saying that the table is tabling, it's not really, yeah, sure. It kind of goes in line with momentumism a little bit, right? But we did something to make it table. Otherwise, those particles that comprise what we call table could not have happened without our intervention. And that's the key thing to remember here, right? Tables don't just table by themselves. Tables can only table when a human being makes that happen. And that is a functional material difference that you can measure and observe in reality. So again, don't let these people just like say that reality is not real, or this stupid shit, or it's just stuff. That's it. I mean, that's almost what I say, right? Yeah, things move, right? Table's table, desk's desk, human's human. Yeah, sure. In some fundamental sense, that's probably true, right? But it is a table. It is a table in that form. Arranged in that way, it is a table.
Called a table or a chair, it's just essentially a label that we're putting on an organization.
Stuff. Yeah. And stuff does not mean matter. Because there are ways to put stuff together to make antimatter. There's a way to put stuff together to make a dream.
Yeah, right.
Right? That does sound like some kind of nihilism, doesn't it? So maybe it is mereological nihilism. Well, I really like, forget the guy's name, big author in the field, who I think his whole thing, he called it organicism.
Peter Van Inwagen.
Yes. Okay. So his whole thing was that, and I could not put my finger on why he believed this. I read his book over and over again, but he was like, yeah, definitely. There's only stuff, except if it's alive, then it's a brand new thing. And it all.
I should just turn it off now. Nobody's even watching me anyway.
Almost felt like it just seemed like living things were a bit magical.
Yeah, right.
But he couldn't really define when life began or not. Is a tornado alive?
Yeah.
It's always exchanging matter with its surroundings, and it's moving, but it also maintains its shape. A whirlpool is an even better example. Like, it maintains its position and shape, but it's made out of something different every second. But it's not alive? What about a flame?
Yeah.
Is a flame alive? And I think he came to a point where he was like, I don't know, but whatever counts as alive is a thing.
Yeah.
Above and beyond the stuff that it's made out of. And the reason I like that is that it can be summed up so hilariously as the belief that people exist, but they don't wear clothes.
Yeah. Yeah, because clothes just being a material object are not actually existing things. They're just matter or stuff arranged clothes-wise is the language that people use. I mean, we could break this down for a moment because we're sort of in the deep.
So they're arranged clothes-wise, though. They are, in fact, arranged in a way that makes them clothing. So again, don't let them slip by. Don't let this little smug little fucker. God, I hate him and I love him because he's so smart, but he gets these basic things wrong. And it leads everyone astray. Even the religious people who watch him, because they go, oh, well, Alex O'Connor says that I can just believe that everything's just an illusion and it's okay for me to have faith in my God, because he doesn't know either. Right? It's so damaging. It's so damaging. Like, this is why people hate philosophers, because they make it harder to understand the world, not easier. When there's no reason for them to confound the issue here. There's no good reason. He's just trying to be the smug little, right? You don't know anything's real. It sounds so cool and interesting. The truth is always boring. The truth is always boring. It's what I say, right? It's the stuff is in fact arranging itself in a particular way, and if it arranged itself in a different way, we would not consider it to be clothing. So there's a fact of the matter here that's relevant. It's clothing doesn't really exist. It's just stuff we just happened to put a label on it. There's no process. There's no reason for it. What?
Deep end here a little bit. Like, there is this question of, if a table is made up of its top and its legs, why do we consider those put together as one object? But this glass of water that's on top of the table, we consider it a separate object. Well, maybe, I can lift it up like that.
Yeah.
But I could, unscrew the legs and lift the top off as well. And you gave the example of a bikini in your video.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But they don't touch each other. And is it like, if I put the top half of a bikini in a car and made it sort of...
It's because you're grouping it. Why is this? This is autism. This is autism. It's pure autism. A bikini is a bikini because it's... Do we need the definition of concept again? A concept is a mental integration of two or more units which are isolated by a process of abstraction and united by a specific definition. Actually, this is not the best definition she has. There's a better one. There it is. A concept is a mental integration of two or more units possessing the same distinguishing characteristic with their particular measurements omitted. So the reason we know what a bikini is, what distinguishing characteristics does the bikini possess from other types of what? Swimsuits. You always have to name what the category is that the thing belongs to, right? But then how do you differentiate it from other things that are also swimsuits? Well, the defining characteristic is that it is a separated piece that is meant to be worn as a singular unit that serves what function? Covers your private parts. That's a bikini. Literally, two units integrated, right? Because they possess a singular characteristic with the particular measurements omitted, right? What measurements did I omit? There's all different kinds of bikinis, right? Because I said it covers your privates. How much does it cover your privates is the question, right? You have like wholesome, where it like fully covers, and there's like a, foo-foos, whatever, the fucking ruffles or something, right? And then there's like even like maybe like a little skirt that comes down, right? Fully covered up here, and like, no side boob or anything like that. Right? So there's those like very covering bikinis. There's lots of one pieces, right? But that's not a bikini anymore, right? Because a bikini it has to be two. Well, there's G-string bikinis where you're barely wearing anything at all, and all the various, degrees in between.
Start driving away, is there a point at which it's far enough away that we can't meaningfully say it's one bikini anymore? Seems like it's kind of just up to us.
Yeah, it is. It's an art. It's not a science.
Yeah, right. My favorite way of explaining that idea is to say, does the left-hand side of this table exist?
Yeah, right.
Because yes, it does, but clearly its distinction as a thing is dependent on our minds.
Where you're standing.
Exactly.
The left side to me is different than what you would call the left side.
Yeah.
And the bikini is a really fun example to think about because one thing that ties the two parts of a bikini together is that they match.
Right.
But they don't have to.
Yeah.
You can wear a different mismatched bottom and top. However, I still think like the folk philosophy the folk philosopher would say, well, but that's not the same bikini. You've taken two different bikini parts and put them together. So then all it takes is for a fashion designer to design a bikini that doesn't match. There is no missing half, two missing halves somewhere. That's just it. That's how it's sold. Now it is one bikini. And
that's how it's sold. That a lot of this also is just equivocating between man-made things and things that exist in nature metaphysically, right? It's equivocating, right? You're saying, oh, well, if a human just makes a human thing, a different human thing, that disproves that there is no such thing as the underlying thing. What? No. How does that follow at all? Like, oh, Vsauce triggers the fuck out of me. Okay, I can't watch this anymore. I seriously can't. It's so triggering for me. Okay, all right, I'm good. Like nobody watched me all night, but if somebody watches this later, that's the only people I'm talking to right now. Yeah.